Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District is hereby called to order.
Recording in progress.
Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see, Teresa, why don't you lead us in the pledge?
Please stand and put your right hand over your heart and join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair, if I could.
Yes.
For the folks that are attending via Zoom, if you could kindly put your Zoom module on mute until the time you're to speak. So anybody that's on Zoom, please put it on mute, please.
So go back.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Avila,
Here.
Director Dennert,
Here.
Director Freeman,
Here.
Vice Chair Gray,
Here.
Chair O'Brien.
Here. All right, item 3, agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair and Board. A couple things to note. We got 2 letters regarding pickleball for item 4, public statements. Those were distributed to the board this afternoon. There's also a supplemental item with some additional emails regarding item 9A regarding drone usage. And then additionally, the board may want to consider what order you want to hear 8A and 9A in. It's fine on the agenda, just throwing that out there. I think we had quite a few folks on both, or on 9A. So.
Any thoughts, anyone, on what order you want to hear them in?
I would suggest we reorder the agenda and hear 9A prior to 8A.
And I agree with Director Freeman.
Okay.
I'm only guessing that that's true, but is there anybody here that's item here for 8A, which is after school club fees? Well, we'll get the people out of uncomfortable chairs a little bit quicker then if we rearrange it. I'm good with rearranging it.
All right, let's rearrange it then. We'll start with new business 9A, usage of drones, and we'll go to continued business, review and provide direction regarding after-school club fees. Okay, alrighty then. All right, item 4, public statements not on the agenda. 2 things to keep in mind. If it's on the agenda, you'll have a chance to speak later, so hold off for now. And the other thing is, when you do stand up to speak, if you could let us know what city, where you're from, what city. I have 2 green cards for items not on the agenda. First one is Susan Fleesup. Are you here? Come up to the microphone. We've got 3 minutes.
And although not required to say what community or city you live in, it just helps us to understand the issues that come before our board a little bit more.
Okay, can you hear me? It's hard to talk through.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm from Simi. I was just wondering, back in March of last year, I sent a letter to this group, and I thought that, it might be read by everybody.
Pull it down the mic a little.
Oh, sorry. Why don't I just do this?
That would be helpful, thank you.
No, I sent this letter, and then I never heard back from anybody on any part of it. So then I looked it up, and I found that the only mention of it in the minutes was that I was concerned or happy that one day we might be able to do Simi Valley Days horse show at the Equestrian Center again. But my letter originally was to find out why it's not, the Equestrian Center, Arroyo, is not being maintained. I went down there and looked around, and it looks like a construction site. Our group held a tax sale in November just to stimulate use of the facility, to show that we could use it, but we can't use the arena in the condition that it's in. It needs to be maintained. So and all this was part of my letter that I sent. And I have copies of it here that I could leave so that everybody could look at it at their convenience. And then I also have a petition with about 50 signatures saying that they would like to see it maintained so that we could use it for actual horse shows and those kind of purposes. So basically that's why I'm here.
I'm familiar with the issue and the letter. I did speak, I believe, I don't know, Dan, if it was with you or Wayne or both of you, so would you briefly be able, would the chair be okay if Dan briefly addresses that? Because I am aware of the issue and I did speak.
Yeah,
This is a while back.
Yeah, this is a while back. If I recall, there was some concern about some changes to the entryway around the, I guess, one side of it. So,
No, that's not an issue. The issue is the arena itself.
I know, but I'm saying one of the issues.
Oh,
Not all of the issues, one of the
Okay.
issues. And I'm also aware there was some concern with some of the maintenance items on the arena itself. So I think we corrected for the issue of regarding the entryway on the left side, I believe. Yeah, okay. So what I'd suggest, Chair, is that maybe I reach out to and sit down with them and have a discussion about it. And we'll see what we can do.
that would be awesome, because
Okay.
we'd like to, our club puts on horse shows at the Ventura County Fairgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. We want it to be used, so.
Right,
yeah.
and, and everybody wants to see it maintained properly so that you can rent it
Yep.
and, have some revenue from it, not just sitting there idle. Okay.
Director, if I could, I'll reach out and we'll set up some time so we can meet in person and maybe out there and kind of go through it.
That would be great.
Okay,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next green card for item 4 is Harry Medved.
Hi there. So, 3 quick comments. One, I just wanted to let you know about the AT plan, the AT plan of Ventura County. It's a new group. It's looking at an active transportation plan for the unincorporated communities of Ventura County. Linda Parks just appointed me, along with J.L. Diaz from the Oak Park Committee, to be on that group. And what we're looking for is trying to build bike paths and walkways to get people to work, to school, because just to reduce the amount of car trips. So just wanted to let you know about that. If there's anyone listening in the unincorporated communities who have ideas, I'd love to see the Rancho Simi land, which is the Medea Creek Trail, connected by crosswalk. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do, so that there's actually a trail that goes all the way to the school. So just letting you know about that. Also, I was really pleased to see the Friends of Oak Park Open Space had an event this past Sunday. And we were planting a butterfly garden in Deer Hill Park. And there's a guy who was digging holes, working really hard, sweating away. And the guy looked really familiar. When I looked closer, it was Brian Dennert. So Brian Dennert, who is on the board here at Rancho Simi, was our hole digger planting plants. So I just thought it was a great way for Simi Valley to show its commitment and love for Oak Park Open Space and Parks. So thank you, Brian, for representing RSRPD.
I don't count those against the seconds, but there was a massive group of volunteers there, and it was very impressive.
That's great. And speaking of working together, Simi Valley and Oak Park, not speaking about the future issue, which we'll talk about later, but we need a designated Oak Park resident on your board of directors. We have a fantastic committee, an advisory committee, but as it said in a recent RSRPD press release, it's only there to give input and advice. We haven't had no voting power. We've been patiently waiting for 55 years with a lot of taxation with no representation, or no real representation. And we will never win an election because we only have 13,000, maybe 14,000 people in Oak Park. There are 130,000 people here. We're outnumbered. But just like in the California legislature and many other places that have a lot of space, we should be represented. 1/5 of your open space is in Oak Park. 1/5 of your parks are in Oak Park. We should have 1/5 of the vote. So I would ask this board and maybe staff in the future, and we'll talk about it in our committee meeting coming up, to please look into ways that we can rewrite the election book so that there will be a provisional seat that could be appointed just like we appoint someone from the MAC to join our committee, or we appoint people from the school board to join the MAC. Somebody should be appointed from Oak Park, if it's not elected, or just take the highest number of votes from Oak Park and just make that an Oak Park seat, because we all love the open space. You guys value the open space as much as we do, but we have different needs in Oak Park. Half of Oak Park is open space. I think it's less than 1/3 of Simi Valley's land is open space. We're surrounded by, our houses touch the open space. Pretty much everyone is affected by the open space in Oak Park. And so it seems absurd to me that for 55 years, just because Lou Boyer, the real estate developer, didn't want to deal with it, the open space, and he gave it to Rancho Simi, it was called the Simi Valley back then, Parks and Rec, that we shouldn't have a voice in our own future. The excuse has always been that it's too far for people from Oak Park, they're not going to drive out here. Well, now we have Zoom. So the two things I would ask you to do is keep Zooming. Please, even after the pandemic's over, please allow people from Simi Valley to attend Oak Park meetings virtually. Same thing with Oak Park, attending Simi Valley meetings, and please look into ways that we can get Oak Park finally represented on your board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? I have no other green cards. If not, we'll move to the Zoom people.
Chair, if I could, I think I can have folks that are affiliated with pickleball, I believe, maybe here for just public comment on that. Robin, would you like to speak? No speaking, okay. Miguel, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would, sir. Thank you, Dan. Dan, if it pleases the board, the pickleball group that's here tonight, we do have a structure of who we'd like to see talk first to go through some bullet points. So if it would be okay with you, can I defer my 3 minutes for a little bit later in the presentation? I think JD is our first speaker, if that can help, if you guys don't mind that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
How many total speakers do you have, Miguel, in the group?
Katie, I believe we have, what, 6?
5, okay.
All right, yeah, that'd be fine.
So you've got,
Thanks.
yeah.
John DeShane should be our first speaker, and I'm going to mute myself. John, if I'll let the board address you and introduce you into the meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Is it okay that I start?
Yes.
Okay, my name is John DeShane. I'm a resident here in Oak Park and an avid pickleball enthusiast, as many of the people here are tonight. Some great players out there. We're very passionate about it. It's the fastest growing sport in the United States, if not the world. And we're really enjoying ourselves out there here in Oak Park. Some of us even venture off into other areas. I've been to Simi Valley a number of times. They have some beautiful facilities. I mean, some amazingly nice facilities out there. We appreciate our dear Oak Park very much. We have probably over 200 people that come from Oak Park and surrounding areas. We are thought of as a very embracing group of people. We welcome beginners where we are. We are helping to grow the sport. We have wonderful people in our community. We do have some issues. There's maintenance issues there in Oak Park. It's starting to decay in some areas. One of our courts actually it's coming out of it. We have issues with contrast in the lines because we have to share the courts with tennis players. But we have light blue lines on medium blue courts and green courts, and it's really hard to see. Other people elaborate on that. But on different times of the day when the sun is shimmering on the surface, it's nearly impossible at times to see certain things. There's shadows that come over things. If there was more contrast, I played at a number of different places. In Burbank, they have yellow ones. In Thousand Oaks, they have a court an area that has orange ones, and they're much easier to see in those problem situations. But other people will elaborate on that. Perhaps some improvements can be made. There's a dirt pathway that comes up from the street. Our parking lot is completely full, and we have 20 or 30 cars parking on the street at times. And there's a little dirt pathway. And perhaps some steps on that area would be good. Some lighting outside. Because of COVID, everybody meets outside the courts and waits for their turn. And we sit in the dark, so maybe some lighting out there would be good. The pavement in the parking lot it's almost gravel. There are a lot of issues there. We really like it there, but they have some incredibly nice facilities in Simi Valley that kind of put ours to shame. And we'd love to see perhaps some improvements and maintenance issues taken care of. Our other people will elaborate. If it's okay this time, may I pass it on to Katie Morgan?
Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Morgan. I play pickleball at Deer Hill about 6 days a week. I want to thank you for giving us the time to speak with you tonight. I also want to thank the several other players that showed up tonight to join us in our request for these maintenance issues, and most especially for the fresh contrasting lines on the Deer Hill courts. I'm sure you saw the document that I sent to Sandy, and she graciously forwarded you with all the fun pictures of the courts. And I just wanted to speak to that document as an overview. The first picture in that document was an outside looking in view of the Deer Hill courts. You can see in that picture, and then again in the third picture that I sent that shows the full court view from the service line. I just want to point out how easily we can see the white lines around the court. Those are the tennis lines. They are outside of the pickleball court on the sides and cut across the pickleball court in the middle of the pickleball court. The blue lines, which are barely visible in the picture, and in real life on the court, they are barely visible, are our pickleball lines. Our eyes don't really see those lines as they're drawn immediately to the white lines instead. So if you contrast that picture with the second one that was in your document of a similarly configured multi-use court at the Del Prado playfields in Newberry Park, and as John mentioned, in Burbank they use similar technology, you can see the yellow pickleball lines are really quite visible. So personally, when I play on a dedicated pickleball court, and even on the Del Prado multi-use court, I become aware of how small a pickleball court actually is. But when I play at Deer Hill with the white lines pulling our eyes out, we get a really distorted sense of the size of our court, and that really affects our game. So Miguel is going to talk a bit about how important it is to be aware of those lines. Thank you again for your time and for supporting our great game.
Miguel?
Hey gang. Hi gang, my name is Miguel Enciso. I am a resident of Agoura Hills, but I teach pickleball at Deer Hill for RSRPD. I have done that for about 3 years now, and I'm also the United States Pickleball Ambassador for the city of Oak Park. So my relationship with Deer Hill, I think, is genuine because even though I don't live in the area, I am the teacher there, or one of the teachers there. And just if I can indulge the board about our great game, when I teach the newer players, one of the things that we try to teach them is to have the very first shot of the game as the serve. We talk about making a deep serve. Conversely, we tell the people who are returning the ball to have a deep return. And then if you're not familiar with our great game, we have an area very close to the net that is divided by a line, and we call it the kitchen. And we try to encourage our new players to hit the ball inside the kitchen line. So you can only imagine with the lines that Katie demonstrated, the light blue lines. I have had way too many questions about where that end of the line is for the deep serve, where the end of the line is for that deep return, and where the heck the kitchen line is. They are confused by the white lines of the tennis court. That's just something I think we have to deal with the multi-use courts at Deer Hill, and maybe that can get addressed down the road, at a future time. But not having those contrasting lines makes a big difference in how we can teach the game. I don't need to explain to the board, if you can't see the lines of your game and the boundary of your game, how difficult that can be for a teacher. Tonight we are trying to get those lines to be repainted and have it more contrasting colors to accommodate the unbelievable community participation we're getting up at the Deer Hill courts. As a side note to the board, anyone can go up there pretty much Monday through Sunday, and you will see all 4 courts being utilized, which is the ultimate goal for Parks and Rec, is usage. I was there this morning to deliver a water bottle to one of our players. There were 24 people there at 9 a.m. all 4 courts were being utilized, and there were 2 groups of 4 waiting for a court to open up. So the courts are being used. That's not the issue, but having those contrasting lines would be a wonderful, wonderful start to just playing up there. Thank you guys for your time. And I am going to, if I may, for the board, introduce Tracy Dash, who is an Oak Park resident, and she has some thoughts as well. Thank you again for your time, guys.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note, I am watching the time here, and they're still within the time limit in total.
Don't worry, I'll go fast. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Dash. I'm going to address the fact, I don't know if anybody on this committee plays pickleball, so we're talking about stuff, and you may say, what the hell are they talking about? If you were to come out, I understood one of you going out to the equestrian center. That sounded great. Maybe one of you could come out and walk the courts with us, and we could give you a visual of when you're standing. I think the courts are 44 feet long. When you're at one end of the 44 feet and you're looking at the other end of the 44 feet, and the blue line is a pale version of the blue court for people, and most of us are of a certain age. We're either partially blind, we have color blindness, cataract, whatever the hell it is. We may have more issues than the kids, but even the younger players do have an issue with seeing the boundaries. So this is a very big deal to us. We've all played in different places where the lines are very bright for the pickleball players. We play with balls that are neon green. So contrast on the court for pickleball is crucial to us. So I would really like, first of all, I'd like every tennis court in Oak Park to be lined for pickleball. But as we're talking about Deer Hill right now, that would be the first thing. And I would invite you to call any one of us and say, hey, let us take a walk with you out there like you're going to do at the equestrian center. And we're happy to show you what we're talking about and maybe even get you to hit a ball and you can see just what a challenge it is. Anyway, thank you for your time. I'm turning it over to Stephen Hoffman.
Stephen?
Okay, good evening. Again, thank you for taking the time to hear us. If Miguel is the international ambassador of pickleball, I am the ambassador to the courts themselves. I spend 20 or 30 minutes every morning with a blower, cleaning off the courts, removing trash, getting the courts ready to play. In the year that I've been involved at Deer Hill, I have been part of purchasing in excess of a dozen nets and taking up small $5, $10 donations from the umpteen players who are more than willing to participate in keeping our courts looking as well as they can. Speaking on reiterating the problem we have with the lack of contrast in the lines. I've been a 50-year tennis player, and the beauty of repainting the pickleball lines is all the pickleball lines are on the interior of the tennis court. So they will not affect the tennis players in any way. There's nothing that overlaps, would be confusing. It's just a matter of brightening them up so that we can see what we're doing. As an aside, we have people who are playing pickleball who have assignments of re-sewing the torn nets, refixing the nets to the braces that they are attached to, and so on. We are really doing a very, very large part of the maintenance on the pickleball facilities themselves. Again, we need to have the lines visible from a playing purpose, from a safety purpose, and look forward to hearing what you can do to help us. And at this point, I think I would like to turn the microphone over to Jeff Williams. And again, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for hearing us. I, too, am a resident of Oak Park, as Stephen Hoffman is, who preceded me. And I would just like to say that, you know, within 5 minutes of our house, there's probably 20 plus tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts. And only those 4 that are at Deer Hill Park, those 2 courts that are at Deer Hill Park are currently striped for pickleball. And I was up at Deer Hill Park tonight before coming to this Zoom meeting, and all 4 courts were full right now on an off night for pickleball. So, you know, I have only been in Oak Park for about a year, and I will say that there are some things that I absolutely love about this place. One is I was able to get a community garden right here in Oak Park really quick, and we too are setting up feedings or setting up plants for the monarchs to come back as well. So Brian, I feel you and I appreciate your work at the park over this weekend. Stephen and I definitely provide maintenance for these courts above and beyond what is normally, you know, done at the park level, because they require a lot of cleaning, which we're happy to do, and we are also really happy to take collections and continue to provide for the courts that we are able to use. But we are outgrowing the 4 courts that we need, and the 4 courts that we currently have do need repair. For sure, there are surface issues, which are a hazard, and the lines are, they're more of a nuisance and a hindrance than an actual deterrent, because you can see by the usage, we're gonna play wherever you give us an opportunity to do so. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I would love to commend the park department, because having moved here from LA, when we put in a light request for it, it's almost immediate. You guys are really on top of the game in the outdoor spaces, to be commended beyond belief. I mean, imagine the bureaucracy in Los Angeles, like you would wait months and never get anything done. So I thank you for your time and for hearing us, and I will turn over to Angelo.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I just want to say a few things. The Deer Hill facility is providing a tremendous community service for the people of all ages to stay active, learn new skills, and build a community atmosphere. As you have heard from the speakers before me, the pickleball community is doing its best to maintain the nets and keep the area clean. We would be very grateful if the Parks and Rec Committee could help with the striping of the courts so that pickleball can continue to be enjoyed by the community. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Is there anybody else who wants to talk on an item not on the agenda? Okay, item 5, approval of minutes.
Chair, I apologize. I was just waiting for public comment. I know that we can't discuss the item at length because it's not on our agenda.
Yeah.
So for the pickleball community, we can't talk about it at length because it's not on the agenda tonight. But Dan, when is our next meeting in Oak Park? Or the Oak Park Advisory Committee?
April 2nd.
So I'd encourage the people that came out.
I'm sorry, the second Thursday in April. Yeah.
I'd encourage the members that came out tonight to come to that Oak Park Advisory Committee so they could speak to the Oak Park Advisory Committee and see if they have a persuasive argument. I have played a lot of pickleball. I've got a picture here on my phone of 3rd place. I played with my dad. I lost to my brother. I do appreciate the sport, but we want to make sure.
3rd place out of how many?
Everybody's made like 6 or 7 teams, but
I'm a solid 3.5 on a good night. Anyways, so that we can discuss at length, if you could come to that committee meeting, and also if that's, maybe we should put it on the agenda for that night.
It's up to the committee, up to you guys. If you want to refer that to the Oak Park Committee, we can do that.
And then that way, the tennis community can also speak. I know we can't discuss that at length, but I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.
especially, I think it was Katie that put together the report.
I appreciate the pictures. It's really hard. It's really easier to see that way. So.
Yeah, the pictures are very helpful. It's like, wow, you can't see this.
Chair, if I could, for the group, regarding separate and apart from the lines issue, the condition of the court, we are in the process of getting a contractor to fix the condition of the court, separate and apart from the line issue. So that I know that's in process and that will be done very shortly. I think there was a comment regarding the parking lot. We can, I'll have the staff inspect the parking lot up there. So those issues, the general condition and maintenance are underway and will be done. The striping is a little separate issue. So.
Could I ask a question about that? Is there going to be a place where we can play while the courts are resurfaced?
Do you want me to answer that? I would ask Mr. Nakaoka to let me know how long it's going to, how much time it might take to resurface the courts is the first question. Wayne, are you available?
Wayne?
Sorry, I was having technical difficulties. It'll probably take 3 days to resurface the courts. 1 day to clean them off, 1 day to put the color down, and 1 day to let it dry.
Yeah, we have no alternative location while that's being done. We have quite a few courts over in the Simi Valley area of the district, but I'm sure folks can come over and use those during that 3-day period.
May I make one last little comment before we end this thing on pickleball?
John, we really try to keep it into one at a time because what happens is that other people we don't allow to speak twice or 3 times, so we really need to, if you want to give me a call, certainly we can do that.
Also to keep in mind, we can't really discuss it at length because it's not on the agenda.
Right,
So
not on the
that
agenda.
gets dangerously close to discussing it at length.
Director Ryan?
I have a couple comments.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right, go ahead. We haven't spoken yet.
Okay, so I don't play pickleball, but I am at Deer Hill Park every day.
Chair, if I could, the public comment period has been closed.
Oh, it
so
has, okay,
It's
sorry.
up to the board. This is a thing where we can't get into conversations.
That's why, okay,
And I think,
all right.
Kate, I think Elaine wanted to.
Director Ryan, if I could ask a question.
Yeah.
The striping, how is that determined color-wise?
So staff's been following the USA Pickleball standards.
So it is
a direction, and the standards say that a full multi-purpose court, the striping should be of the same color as the inner area of the court. So the inner area of our courts are blue, so the pickleball striping is in the same family color, blue, and that's recommended by the USA Pickleball Association.
Well, I wanted to know that so that people understood that it's not an arbitrary decision. It comes from the Pickleball Association. And one of the reasons is to not interfere with tennis play. I'm sure that's part of the conclusion, that make it compatible for everyone. So I wanted to be, just to clarify that the color came actually from the National Pickleball Association. So we're trying to do exactly what is recommended of us.
Dan, did you say it was up to the board? Because I have seen Danny waving for a while at us on Zoom. She was.
Yeah, that's the purview of the board. I'm just, you do have the ability to work around the strict rules and allow additional comment if you would like.
Danny Sue on Zoom has been trying to wave at us.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm still here.
All right.
I just had a couple comments. One of them was about parking lot. The parking lots in Deer Hill Park, all of the parking lots are really bad. I don't play pickleball, but I'm at that park every day. And the second comment was about the pennisetum grass that was taken out. I thought that was all that was going to happen, and it looks amazing there with what you guys did over the weekend. And that is going to be one awesome area once it's all established and it grows in. You really did a good job. And that's it.
Thank you. All right. That concludes public comments. Going once, going twice, the second time, done. Okay, item 5, approval of minutes, Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District Board of Directors meeting, February 2nd.
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Director Abela?
Aye.
Director Dennert?
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
Chair O'Brien.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes with unanimous vote.
Item 6, consent agenda.
I have a question about the consent agenda. It's probably for Wayne. I'm looking at item B of the consent agenda. I read through the report, but could we be a little bit more clear what the activity is that they're doing there? I see Wayne's camera turning on.
What was your question, sir?
For part B, it says that they have reserved activity and it has all stipulations, and I could read the contract, but what are they doing? Can we describe that?
Wayne, this is item 6B, Wayne. We're releasing the property to the Datron.
What it is Datron, that actual asphalt pad is on top of the hill. Datron built that about 30 years ago. What they do is they do microwave testing from the facility that's on East Los Angeles Avenue. They bounce microwaves back and forth from up on top of the hill. So 3 times a year, or 2 times a year for about 3 days, they go up there with all their equipment and put 2 big dishes up there and bounce information back and forth from their main office. That's what they do up there.
That was my only question. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Denner,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Okay. Item 7, presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings. Item A, presentation of the part-time employee of the month for January 2022 to Bryn Crop, Site Director.
Thank you, Chair. Director of Administration Teresa Pennington will present the report.
Thank you, Chair O'Brien and members of the board. I'm pleased to present tonight the January 2022 Employee of the Month to Bryn Crop. Bryn is a site director in the Recreation Department. She's worked for the district for 19 years. This is her first Employee of the Month award. Bryn has an important role at the Park District, caring for children in the before and after school club program. In her many years as site director, she has had the opportunity to enrich the lives of hundreds of children, providing a safe, active, and educational environment that allows them to flourish. Bryn personally connects with each of the participants at the club. Her attention to detail, personal investment in everyone that attends her program, and ability to plan unique activities on a daily basis allows for the program to succeed. During her time in Oak Park, Bryn facilitated a program that educated children on the benefits of animal adoption through a local animal shelter. Bryn's commitment and dedication to her career at Rancho Simi and caring for the kids in the community is commendable. She is deserving of the recognition of the Employee of the Month award. And Bryn's here with us this evening if she wants to come on up. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. I did 17 years in Oak Park, and after the after-school programs closed down, I came over here to see me right before COVID. So these last 2.5 years have been very challenging, as you can imagine. So receiving this award has been really important to me. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cake's going on too.
Cake's gonna, and importantly, the
Oh, even better. I'll pronounce it. One more, sorry. Thank you so much for service.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. And this 7B, status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you, Chair. I have a very brief report. We've had no complaints related to COVID in the last couple of weeks. We had one new positive case in amongst the staff, so that's come way down. And also, as the board knows, the mask mandate was modified today, which has been implemented throughout the district. Vaccinated folks no longer are required to wear masks indoors, and unvaccinated folks still must do that. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question. Is that removing the mask, does that change the directive as an emergency and change the possibility of changing how we can meet?
I understand now that the declared emergency for COVID is still in place. I think the governor extended through the end of March, I believe, but I can get an update on that. So no, the change in the mask mandate has no relationship to how we're conducting meetings at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question about that earlier. Harry asked about that. Could you just tell what our plan is currently for hybrid meetings as of now? That we're going to continue with Zoom?
Yeah, so as far as I understand, the board direction is as long as the emergency is in place, we're going to continue in that hybrid status whereby both the board and the public has the option to attend in person or via Zoom. We do need to have a discussion amongst the board regarding the longer term keeping Zoom in place permanently. So that's probably something I should bring to the board to talk about from that perspective. But as of now, we're planning the hybrid for the immediate future.
May I just ask one question without getting into discussion,
Yes.
just so I know ahead of time what we're. I'm still a little unclear, and I know I've had it explained to me, but it seems like I've had it explained in different ways. If the emergency passes, are we going to have the option of continuing Zoom meetings, or will that completely foreclose that option?
As I understand it, the board.
And let me rephrase that according to.
The public will still have the option for attending via Zoom. The board itself will have to attend in person, or will have to notice the meeting at the location the board member's at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we good? All right. We're skipping to 9A at this point, new business. 9A, discussion and possible direction regarding drone usage on district property.
Thank you, Chair. I'll provide the report briefly. On several occasions, October 7th, November 18th, and December 2nd, the board considered at its regular meetings an ordinance to allow drone usage in various areas of the district. At that December 2nd meeting, the board approved the use of drones per compliance with federal regulations in the district's open space properties. The board also gave staff the flexibility to designate specific areas in developed parks. And a developed park is a park that has grass and picnic tables and amenities. So at this time, the open space areas are available for drone usage. We have not selected any parks for drone usage. I did want to note for the record that there was a photo in the Oak Park Acorn that showed a picture of the developed Oak Canyon Community Park and said this park is open for drone usage. That is inaccurate. None of the developed parks are allowed for drone usage at this point. So we got some input on this. This item is just put on the agenda so we could take the public input and then the board could discuss the item if it desired and provide direction to staff. That concludes the report.
All right, so first we should open up to public comment, I'm guessing. That sound right?
That sounds good, Chair. And if you want to do the cards that are the people that are in person, and then I will transition into the Zoom folks and call out names for Zoom comment.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, I have some green cards here. First one is Diana Gideon. I hear your name.
Madam Chair, I'd like to defer mine until after Liz has spoken.
Okay.
You're okay with that?
That's fine.
Thank you.
And I've got a Tamari Petha. Not reading the name right. Tamar? Can you help me with this? I cannot read this handwriting. I'm sorry.
I'll walk it up to the audience. It looks like last name Purdue.
Yeah.
Purdue, thank you. Come on up.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Is this where I'm coming?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Hi,
Go for it.
Tammy Purdue. My husband and I have had an equine veterinary practice in Simi Valley for over 25 years. We bought our home because of the equestrian community. And I'm here today to say that we as horse owners spend an enormous amount of time training and desensitizing our animals to the natural obstacles that occur and that we can encounter when we ride in our community. And I'm talking about years, not days. It takes years to get a horse to be able to go through our community safely with the garbage trucks and the dogs and the, I mean, you know, you can imagine. So it behooves us to train our animals and desensitize them because we've invested in our lifestyle with our homes and our animals and our community, and we realize what a 1,000-pound animal underneath us who lives by the fight or flight instinct can do. The allowance of these unnatural drones into our community allows horse owners no opportunity to prepare for the situation that would occur if we encounter a drone while riding on our horse. What liability will the operator or city officials have if an injury occurs to our animal or ourselves should a drone be the cause of the injury? Please realize that these incidences that may occur could be catastrophic to the rider or the horse, and I really feel like drones should not be allowed in our open spaces.
May I ask a question just so I'm aware of the situation? Have you had any issue with drones as far as horses are concerned?
Have I personally?
Sure, that you're
No.
aware of. Okay.
No,
Thanks.
I have not encountered that, thank God.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amy Shannon. Amy? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you all for having us here. I live in Bridle Path. You asked where we're at in Simi Valley. Been here for 35 years. My home backs up to the green space. My husband and I use Challenger Park and Coyote Park probably 5 or 6 days a week. My husband is a drone flyer. I am an equestrian. And my husband and I both, especially my husband, hikes everywhere back there. We know more canyons than exist. I wanted to share with you, when I saw the article about drones being approved for open space, I was quite concerned. And I've never spoken with you before, but this kind of made my hair stand up on my back. I love drones. They're fun. I have to say they're extremely hard to fly in the beginning, and that is one of the reasons why it scares me really bad to have them in open spaces. It takes some skill, and I think someone pointed out that it's a great thing to have support our people in the area, because drones are going to be out there more and more and more, and there'll be jobs through with delivery and things like that. And so I think we need to support both. I didn't know that we weren't allowed to fly drones in the parks. And my husband and I have gone to the green grasses, I have to say, in the parks, and safely. You can see people, you can look around and see people. My concern when we go to open space is because not all drone flyers have exact control of their drone. It may be going over the next canyon or down the hill, and they're expensive. If you own that drone, you're going to go after it no matter where it goes. You're going to be climbing down the non-trails in the open spaces. I certainly would, to get my expensive drone. There are single trails where the horse the trail is just big enough for the horse, like Coyote Park, right outside the playgrounds. And if drones can fly high, they can fly low. And if they buzz by the horse quickly, horses, and not only horses, but all the deer that are back there, all the other wildlife that are back there, they live by fight or flight. And it's if it goes past a coyote, it goes past a deer, it goes past a horse.
Excuse me, so you got about 15 seconds.
Okay, anyway, you can see my concern is it's really dangerous. It could be a fire issue with the batteries. and we're gonna have people tracing over all the hills. It's quite dangerous to mix the two. The green parks are fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brenda Chu.
Yes,
As Brenda comes up, I missed that.
the first name of the last speaker. Sandy, did you get that?
Amy.
Oh, Amy.
Hi, I live in Simi Valley. I want to thank the Board of Directors for this opportunity for the public to voice their concerns about drones being allowed to fly in all Rancho Simi open spaces. Simi Valley is unique in that it is home to a large equestrian community. Challenger Park is right next door to Bridle Path, and Coyote Park, which has a public riding arena, is also surrounded by horses-owned properties. Because these two parks are in such close proximity to these equestrian communities, there are many horseback riders that ride the open space trails that are connected to these parks on a daily basis. These open space trails are often steep with sharp drop-offs, with many narrow single-track trails leading to blind curves. If horses, which are flight animals, would ever encounter a drone on these trails, the results would be disastrous, with the rider getting bucked off and seriously injured, or even worse, deadly, with the horse panicking off the side of a cliff. Since drones are not permitted at either Coyote Park or Challenger Park, would you please consider extending that same safety measure to the open space trails that are directly connected to these two parks? Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Liz Fold.
Thank you for listening to our concerns. I know that your jobs are not easy, and I know you've also gotten additional information from me. I sent one long letter to everybody and then a single letter. And I thank you, Brian, Director Dennert, for putting this on the agenda. I'm very pleased that you allowed us to talk. Anyway, I use the open space every day. I either walk my dog, I hike, or I also ride. I have an older horse, so I hardly ever go out into the open space anymore. But it's still very important to me. And the revised policy regarding the use of drones in open space without a permit or without a specific area for those wanting to learn and practice their piloting skills is very concerning to me. And here are some of the reasons. Safety on the trails in open space. On narrow, winding trails, drone users cannot maintain the required line of sight. This endangers the safety of other trail users, hikers, bike riders, and horseback riders. Hot drone motors and batteries have caused wildfires when they land in dry grass. This is a significant risk in our wildfire area to trail users and neighborhoods. Another wildfire will limit insurance options or increase the cost for our community. Then, of course, like some other people have said, it's the preservation of habitat. This is there is an environmental impact from fire, of course, but also from the disturbance to native plants and wildlife. And also, as this other lady was saying, that, for example, retrieving down drones, people, especially people that are new at it, they go climbing down a hill and tramping over plants, and it's just not a good thing. Well, lastly, recreating in peace with nature, away from distractions, is very important and a shrinking option. It's important to think long and hard what activities are appropriate in our open space. I want to be able to use open space safely and enjoy the unique benefits and value of our space resource, our open space resource. And the district can accommodate drone hobbyists by providing them with the appropriate area for their use. Recreational activities have locations that are specific to their particular use and the needs and safety
15 seconds, Chair.
Oh, really? Okay.
I
I just have like one sentence. the district limits used to keep people safe, and like a golf on golf courses, not in the park. I mean, I don't think you're.
Okay, Ms. Folk, thank you. That's
Okay.
3 minutes.
Can I just
Okay.
ask- Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Have you had instances where there's been issues with drones in the open space near where you live?
There have been complaints from other people, and there's some
And
speakers coming.
Just so I have some idea, like how often and when did those complaints happen?
I've been on the trail on the outside of around Coyote Park and had people flying drones over me.
Are we talking recently, a couple months ago, a year ago? I mean,
It was before COVID. So
prior to COVID?
Yeah, because
Okay, nothing since then?
Nothing personally.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Julie Huber.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, my first thing is, what's more important, drone flying in our mountain parks or the safety of our riders and our horses? On June 30th, this last year, around 6 o'clock, I was doing my chores, feeding my horse in his stall, and I leaned down to put his feed in his feeder, and I heard a drone. In a split second, the drone came down by the opening of the stall, spooked my horse. He hit me with his head, and it threw me across the stall, and I hit the wall, and I got up and realized that my arm was not right. I was by myself. I got to my house, and I called my daughter. I was taken to the hospital. I dislocated my elbow completely out of the socket, and a bone came through my skin. The ER tried several times to put it back into the socket, and they couldn't. So finally they had to call an orthopedic surgeon. The next thing I remember is waking up with the cast on my arm from my wrist to my shoulder. It took over 4 months before it healed. I have permanent damage and flashbacks constantly. Please reconsider and do not let the drones ruin our mountain parks.
Okay, Diana Gideon?
Good evening. My name is Diane Gideon. I am the president of the Board of Directors for the Montgomery Ranch Homeowners Association, which is comprised of 286 equestrian properties on the southwest end of Simi Valley. Our association is bordered on the west by Fountainwood Equestrian Properties and on the east by Bridle Path, which is the largest equestrian community in Simi Valley, which is comprised of 630 homes. Coyote Hills and Chandler Parks are in the center of these equestrian communities. They are nestled in the hillside. Montgomery Ranch's internal trail system opens to the entrance of Coyote Hills Park. We ride through the park daily. We lead to the trails and the hillsides, and we ride inside the park in the equestrian facility. We have a profound concern for the safety of our equestrian members if the flying of drones is permitted in these two specific parks and surrounding open areas. Allow me to explain, as some of the people, my predecessors have said to you, horse chemistry. Horses are motion animals. They are flight and fright, which you have heard from many of the speakers tonight, who react negatively to any sudden movements and loud sounds or buzzing noises, which is especially concerning given drones. Horses and drones do not make for a compatible environment. Members of the Montgomery Ranch Homeowners Association are very proactive in working hard to maintain the safety of our community, and the operations of drones undermines that objective.
We are currently working in conjunction with the city for repainting horse equestrian crossings to heighten the safety of the entrances, including Coyote Hills Park. We fully understand that Coyote Hills and Chandler Parks are not exclusively for equestrian usage and should be enjoyed by all members of the community. We currently share the trails and parks with hikers, dog walkers, bicyclists, soccer players, basketball players, bird enthusiasts, and general nature lovers. You may or may not be aware that the neighboring homeowners have a unique connection to Coyote Hills Park. The parkland stood undeveloped for many years. We were told that Parks and Recs did not have the money to develop the park. The surrounding equestrian homeowners, of which I was one, or am one, had a need for an equestrian arena and the access to
15
trails.
seconds, Chair.
As a result, they put the plan in motion to raise private funds to start the development, hence Coyote Hills Park was elected.
Ms. Gideon?
Homeowners were given the opportunity to name the park, and I will skip forward real quick. I would like to stress again, equestrians use these two parks daily. This is not a case of a few people that have a personal agenda against drones. It is about large equestrian population who want to preserve the safety of our equestrian communities. One last point, I hope you will be given serious consideration to due diligence in researching the potential fire hazard that has occurred or could be occurred with drone usage. Montgomery Ranch homeowners spend tens of thousands of dollars yearly in fire prevention
All right.
maintenance.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
So I just respectfully request that you reevaluate and reverse your decision about the flying of drones in Coyote Hills.
All right, thank
Park.
you. Would anyone else present like to speak? All right.
I would like to may I just answer Director Albius, you asked if anybody had any incidences with drones?
I'll ask, if it's okay, I'll ask the question.
Sure, go ahead.
I would like to know that.
All right.
And the answer to your question is yes. I personally have had 2 incidences. None of them were of a serious nature. No accidents happened, but they both occurred while we were riding along Oak Creek Canyon, which is part of our community's trails. And the drones were flying overhead. The horses reacted, not extensively because, well, I won't go into detail. My horses
Can
are
I
that
just
way.
ask-
But the operators, we could not locate them.
Just-
And it was last week.
Just roughly time frame wise.
Last week.
When did these incidents happen?
I beg your pardon?
When did these incidents happen?
Last week was one of
I
them.
didn't hear that, okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. The previous one was, the year before.
Okay, so about a year apart.
That is, yes, for me personally, correct.
Can I just ask one question, because I'm trying to learn, maybe just one more question?
Go ahead.
Speak into the mic. We can't hear you, thank you.
Okay, one more question, because I just want to understand. So I understand about, animals in general. I'm not a horse owner. I know people who own horses, but if you can help me here, in terms of the sudden reaction to drones, there's other things in nature and that happen outside that cause horses to react as well. Am I right on that?
You are correct.
Right. Drones aren't the most prominent thing that cause horses to react. I just want to get an understanding for that.
It'd probably take me a couple of minutes to address that.
That's okay.
I could defer to our doctor here, to our veterinarian, but yes.
No, okay.
Yes.
All right.
It's the constant movement, and horses see, up
Okay.
and down, they react to that, and noises.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, someone else wanted to speak? Your hand is up first.
Why don't you go first?
All right,
You go first, and I'll.
okay.
And just encourage you to turn in your green card, please, so we have a record. Yes. So see.
And my name is George Kreider, and I live in the bridle path. I'd like to see a consideration of different options, like a drone park, which they could build like maybe obstacles or something like that for them to fly them around and have like little competitions and stuff like that. Kind of like there's skateboard parks, there's BMX parks. You don't see BMX riders riding on skateboard parks or, intruding on others and stuff. But there's also the model airplane field that is over towards Moore Park, where a lot of people go, model airplane enthusiasts go and fly, but they don't fly them, anywhere else in the neighborhoods and stuff like that. They go to a designated location. The drones will be a hazard for open space, like people have mentioned before. The batteries, they get hot and everything. They can, if the drone crashes, something can short out and start a fire. You don't want to, it'd be really bad to start a fire near an equestrian area, because the horses and animals are hard to evacuate, in a quick manner. I was fighting the Woolsey fire, and I saw animals perish because they couldn't evacuate them fast enough. And a lot of them were horses. If somebody was thrown from a horse, maybe out riding in one of these open spaces, and is thrown from a horse, they may not even have phone reception or nobody around, and they may not even get help in time, and it could be fatal. Not all drone operators are responsible. Not all of them have common sense and are aware of the dangers of flying them around horses. I witnessed an injury, Julie, and she was the lucky one that was actually at home at the barn. Somebody else that might be out in an open space might not be that lucky. They could be thrown off and then thrown off of a cliff or somewhere, or in an area, and they might be out there, laying out there for who knows how long, and nobody would be able to find them. So I think, picking and designating a park or something like that for the drones would be a better idea. Green grass and landscaping that's not combustible.
Chair, we need to wrap this.
And then some of the other.
I'm sorry, sir, your 3 minutes are up. We have to.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you. Harry, you're up.
First off, I want to thank all of you for everything that you do. I think Jeff Williams was on the call. He's a new resident of Oak Park. I live in Oak Park. I was just recently reelected to the Oak Park Committee. Very honored to serve with you guys. You have a tough job, and you're trying to make everyone happy, but I agree with Jeff that you just call Rancho Simi and the graffiti is painted out, and stuff happens overnight. You wouldn't get that in LA, so I'm grateful that you are our park service.
Harry, by the way, I'm tempted to use up your whole 3 minutes of questions.
Because I have 3 questions for you guys that I want you to answer. So number 1 is why? Why did you do this? Number 2 is how? And number 3 is how can we make sure this kind of thing never happens again? So number 1, why? I was attending a funeral last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, at Mount Sinai Memorial Park in Simi Valley. The rabbi had to stop for a few minutes because for 7 minutes there was a drone buzzing overhead. That guy might have thought he was buzzing open space. It's very easy to confuse it. It's in Memorial Park, it's beautiful green hills. How are people supposed to know if they're in national park space, open space in Oak Park, open space in Simi Valley? So I understand it was a well-intentioned move on your part to instate this ordinance. It sounds like there's a problem with some drones in Simi Valley of bad actors, like this guy at the Memorial Park who was buzzing your funeral, and by putting them in a designated area, it sounds like you were trying to fix the problem. But how this came about was what upset me. The fact that I've been elected on a committee and I've been working a lot of hours, we don't get paid any money, we're volunteers, and where's the common courtesy that I have to open up my acorn to find out about this? You have an Oak Park committee to advise you guys. We're here to help, and the fact that Wayne would submit for an interview with the acorn and specify Oak Park, and here's Oak Canyon, here's what we're gonna do. I understand he was misquoted, but somehow the Simi Valley version of the acorn still says that it's not under consideration. It says, it's a roll, folks, it's happening. The press release on your website still says it's happening. So there was some backpedaling done, and I don't like that. I feel that how we have to make lemonade out of lemons moving forward, how can we make sure this happens again? Please, if you're gonna do anything like this, with pickleball versus the tennis courts, you guys, have lots of debate with the public. You put a story in the Acorn, say, come on out, get everybody into the meetings with pickleball. I don't know why you didn't do that with the drones. Clearly it's a problem with Simi Valley. It's definitely a problem with Oak Park. I've spoken to 2 people, because of the Brown Act, I'm only allowed to speak to 2 people on committee who agree with me that Oak Park would never go for this. Our homes, all of them, front open space. We have more open space than anything else in Oak Park. So please, next time, let's just work together. Please consult with your committees, and don't make rules that are going to offend the neighborhood. Let's just plan stories in the Acorn together about here's what we're thinking of doing, and then get a public opinion, and then make a decision. Don't issue a press release without consulting with your constituents first. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak before I go to the Zoom people? Okay.
David Ibarra on Zoom.
Thank you, and fellow board, thank you for having me here. I am an Oak Park resident, but it just happens that I also work for the Federal Aviation Administration, and I'm also the subject matter expert on UAS drones. I start off with committees creating FAR Part 107 as well as the recreational regulations. Exactly what everyone here has spoken about, and they are valid concerns. I'm here as a concerned resident. Again, I was very surprised when I saw it in the Acorn that they're looking to set up areas to fly drones recreationally. And I sent information via email previously on pretty much the requirements, and there's a lot of things that should be looked at before even considering setting up an area for recreational drone flying. One of the main things, actually there's 8 different things, but there's 2. One of them is you have to operate under a community-based guidelines. But to create those guidelines, any organization or committee would have to get the FAA and eventually have the FAA approve them. And once you create those guidelines, then you have to be able to monitor them. Something else, even though these drone operators want to fly recreationally, they still have to take a test. They still have to be able to register those drones. They still have to carry documentation showing that they passed that test and they're able to fly. And they can only fly in visual line of sight. So even though the drones are capable of going up to 1,000 feet or more, and they're capable of going 2, 3, or 4, even 6 miles away, if it's not within line of sight, they can't fly. And but if there's no community-based guidelines to fly in a specific area that the community has designated, then they can't fly at all. They have to fly under what's called FAR Part 107 regulations, which is commercial operation. You have to be a pilot, a drone pilot, certified drone pilot to be able to fly that, which I am as well. I have my own fleet of drones. I also do consulting on the side for drones, and exactly here, that's why I'm here in front of the board to say, if you need help with this, I'm here. I can guide you as an Oak Park resident. The parks say here that if you're going to designate an area to fly drones, it's going to take some work. It can be done, but there's also the regulating of the area too. Who's going to monitor that area to make sure that people that fly are certified properly, they have the documents properly to fly. So it's going to take some time.
You have about 15 seconds, David.
And I am done.
Samantha Fulb.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the comments that were coming out and sharing with you today. And I also just want to say how lucky we are to have a subject matter expert like Mr. Rivera to really speak to the thought and consideration that should go into developing a program of allowing drones. I sent an email out to the board earlier this week. I am not a horse person, but I do enjoy hiking in Challenger Park and the Coyote Hills Park. I often hike with my dog. I like being out in the quiet. I have a very high stress job, and it's nice to be able to get away from things for a little while and just enjoy nature. I can't do that when there are drones flying around. I've hiked in other parks with the dog where there are drones, it stresses him out, he gets upset. You know, it's not the same as a bird or some other natural animal flying around. They know that it's something different and weird and puts them on edge, and it puts me on edge too. So, you know, I'd like to encourage you to reconsider your decision to limit our ability to enjoy the peace and quiet of these open spaces. I'd also like to note that last year we're cleaning out the garage. I live on Old Stone Place, and we had a bucket of drones that we had in the garage because, you know, the week after Christmas morning, there were drones that were flying over the wall from the horse trail behind our house, and, you know, landing in the arena with the horse, landing in the yard. You know, we find them all over the place, and we post some of them on Nextdoor and try and return them to people, but we had like 8 or 10 that hadn't been returned. And it takes a certain level of skill to fly these things and make sure that it's done safely. And, you know, I think we need some better regulations and a better oversight process to make sure that we can keep everyone safe while allowing everyone to enjoy these open spaces.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tim Gray.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'm coming at it from 2 different perspectives. I'm a horse owner and I'm a drone owner. First off, drones are already regulated. The FAA has the rules for that, and I had to go through the certification process and register my drone, and I know what the rules are to fly. But there are also irresponsible drone owners as well as irresponsible horse owners. The arguments that have been made are kind of goes both ways. There are plenty of cases of fires that were started by people smoking on horses. There's plenty of cases of people getting injured by horses. There's plenty of cases of horses being scared by anything you find in open space. The coyotes, the snakes, everybody else, the bicyclists, the other hikers. It's the responsibility of a horse owner to train their animal to be around other things. I had to train my horses to be around electric cars. They didn't make any noise, but they suddenly appeared. So there's things that both parties need to take care of, and I think that the city or the park district should come up with a location where people can enjoy a hobby and not limit it to one small little location where everybody can run into each other and cause more problems, but give a couple of places where people can work on it and come up with a solution that it works for both people, both groups, just like they had to do with bicyclists and every other community group that continuously has conflicts with each other over the use of the same common spaces. Thank you very much.
Tim, can I ask you one question?
Yes.
I probably should know this, but I honestly don't. So are you a horse owner here in Simi Valley?
No, my horses are actually up in the Big Tahunga Canyon.
Okay.
I run an equestrian program that works with disabled people. So we spend a lot of time training horses to work around unusual things, unusual sounds, and people with disabilities who need a lot more care.
Well, it's great that you do that. Anyway, thank you for that answer.
Dan Cooper.
Okay, hi everyone. I've got a 350-word statement that I'll try to get through. I'm Dan Cooper. I'm a senior conservation biologist with the Resource Conservation District, Santa Monica Mountains. And I live within a mile of drone-free Oak Canyon Community Park. I hike there every week. I'm also an elected member of the Oak Park Advisory Committee. We as a committee were never consulted about drone use by either staff or board, and I still haven't heard from Rancho Simi about this issue. Right about in the Acorn. Drones are banned for most natural areas of California. Most of our parks are here in Oak Park are nestled within natural areas. They cause nearly uninterrupted noise in use, similar to every neighbor on your block, leaf blowing one after the other, potentially all day. I think we can all recall examples from our own lives where drones have disrupted our own peace and quiet outdoors. For me, it was a beach in Kauai 2 weeks ago for 45 minutes. Drone noise is not predictable, it's artificial. It varies loud and quiet, and this unpredictability and movement is what disturbs wildlife as well as people. Drones also cause unintentional wildfire. The idea that people would fly their drones over just the lawn areas and not the surrounding wildland areas is really hopelessly naive. You can Google it. Drones have crashed into bird nesting areas, most famously in 2021 in Orange County, when 2 drones crashed on 2 separate days into the largest nesting colony of elegant terns in the US. The second one caused them to abandon the eggs the entire season, leaving dead eggs and young on the nesting island. Note that they're banned at Bolsa Chica and were at the time, but they're allowed just across PCH at Bolsa Chica State Beach. So obviously drones don't follow political boundaries. Their owners don't either. The last time I was at Bolsa Chica in November, I watched as someone got out of their car and began flying a drone over the lagoon toward the turn island in the 20 minutes I was there, in front of a no drone sign. Numerous large birds, including nesting raptors such as hawks and owls, nest and forage in the open space of Oak Park, including in Oak Canyon Community Park. And I'm curious whether risk to them was assessed before the decision was made to dramatically change the outdoor use of our open space. Please reconsider the use of drones anywhere in Oak Park. It appears this discussion needs to continue. Thanks very much.
Dan, I have one question for you. But I want to tell you, I was kind of drifting a little when you had me at the beach in Kauai there. So, in the past several months since we voted on the drone issue, has there been any noticeable uptick or increase in the use of drones than what was occurring prior to that?
No, but bear in mind that I follow this issue very carefully, and I only learned about it a couple days ago. So I'd be stunned if anyone else knew that drones were permitted in Oak Canyon Community Park. I still don't know if they are, but
they're not. Ed, if I could, drones are not allowed in Oak Canyon Community Park. The article in the Acorn was wrong.
Okay, I was just going with what I read.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
Right.
All right, Danny Sue.
I don't see Danny online.
I'm here, but I really don't have much. We do have parks that have a lot of open space that I very rarely see people in the grassy areas, which would be an okay place for drones to fly. Like I said, they're here and they're not going anywhere. And if we don't give people a place to fly them, I'm going to be in my backyard with that fire hose attachment that I have, keeping them out of my backyard. But like I said, we have I wouldn't fly them anywhere near May Boyer or any of those other parks that are really busy. But I visit most of the parks at least once a week, and we do have a lot of green open space where there aren't people, where I don't see them being a problem. That's all. I didn't plan on talking about drones. Thank you.
JL Diaz.
Hi, this is JL Diaz. I really I'm surprised by the article in the Acorn, and I think we should just recognize that there are people with different hobbies, and we should find a middle ground where people can enjoy drone flying and equestrian and horse riding, etc. So yeah, I think we should consider these inputs by the people that are attending this call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anybody else online who hasn't spoke or on Zoom that would like to speak? Chair, I think that concludes the public comment period.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, I guess we should discuss it now. Obviously, we need to rethink this issue.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just so that it's clear. Dan, can I, a question of the district manager. Dan, could you, just so there's not any misunderstanding, could you explain the ordinance and what it does and doesn't do in light of all the comments that have been made?
Correct. So the ordinance currently allows for the usage of recreational drones in the areas that are designated open space in the district. So that would be all the natural areas that are not developed parks, which are places where there's grass and picnic tables and that, so that The ordinance also requires that that is done in compliance with federal regulations. So I think we heard that Mr. Rivera indicate that there's certain federal requirements that need to be followed. That is required in our ordinance. So that in all open spaces it's allowed. In developed parks, for example, Oak Canyon Community Park, Coyote Park, anything that's developed, the ordinance allows staff the option to designate areas. The idea behind that was if there was a drone club or there was a location that drone flyers specifically wanted to use in a designated park, that we could get that input and staff could work with those folks and identify a specific park. I believe at the time we talked about it, we said that we might have 1 or 2 parks, maybe 3, that are designated. The comparable there is we have a remote control airplane club, and they have a club in town, and we've designated Rancho Santa Su park fields for that activity at a specific time and location. So the purpose of the ordinance would be to, as we might get a drone club or drone enthusiasts, if we wanted to identify a location for that specific club, the ordinance allows the flexibility for that. But as of now, we don't have any areas, including Oak Canyon Community Park or any of our developed parks, where drone flying has been designated or approved.
And Dan, how many public meetings did we have? Because I sometimes lose track of the requirements. How many public meetings did we have before the ordinance was enacted?
We had 3 public meetings.
Okay, and when was the most recent one?
December 2nd.
Anybody else have questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank everybody for coming out because I was the lone voice in opposition to this. I actually feel strongly that not only is you only need 1 accident to make it a bad idea, and I also think it's an invasion of people's space. Whether it's in open space or on a public park, developed park, community site. I understand that people want to use the drones, but I feel strongly that our park system is not the location for them unless we could arrange and share with the park, with the model airplane people. I don't know if that's compatible, but maybe there's a way to have them share the model airplane park with the drone people. But I just feel that there is just enough risk that whether it's with a horse or a bike rider or an invasion of privacy as I'm sitting in the park, I just feel that it's not a good idea for the park district to allow this in any situation unless we can specify a specific location. So that's my feeling, and thank you.
I want to start out by expressing my sympathy to the speaker that spoke that was injured. And I realize that was hard to speak about that injury. Is this good, Harry?
Sorry, we can't hear you. Please speak.
When you shared the story about the injury, I appreciate that.
Right, let's
work on the mic.
Sorry, let's try to get you a different mic. Sandy, can you try to?
Or you can use Josh's.
Yes, Sandy gets Josh's now.
You know you've spoken too much when you wear out the battery on a mic. Maybe that's a reminder. I just want to say my sympathy with the speaker that was injured by a drone. I understand that was hard to speak, and I appreciate you coming out tonight. I want to know more about that. I know we're not interviewing each other right now, so just separately in the meeting, I want to know more about that so we can form better policies. I do want to say to the public that came out tonight, we appreciate you coming out tonight. We might not be able to completely make a good policy tonight, but we could start on it. And the reason for that is when we drafted the policy, we didn't say these are the rules and we can't fix them or adjust them. we purposely designed them so that we could get community feedback and adjust them when needed. So if we adjusted them tonight, maybe 2 weeks later, or maybe 6 months later, somebody would come up with another problem that we could address. I'm the one that asked for there to be a press release, and the reason is, I think we did a good job. We did it at 3 separate meetings. The meetings were in person, the meetings were on Zoom. But that said, clearly not everybody heard about it. And so I wanted there to be a press release, so if there was more feedback, you'd come to us like you're here tonight. You would tell us your concerns, and then we could adjust that policy. So in my mind, I get what Elaine's saying. We definitely did not agree. But the thing that I would disagree with her on is, I was trying to create rules for rule followers. So we need 2 sets of rules. In my mind, the first set of rules is for rule followers. So you want to fly a drone, you want to follow the rules. So we need a place where you can do that safely, maybe a place where you can't do that, and we can adjust those as needed. The second category we need is rules for people that don't respect others and don't follow rules. So I point out, if there's a drone not following the rules, not in line of sight, about the only way you could figure it out is if you had another drone. Like, where is that person? So with that in mind, one of the reasons we did this, and driving force for me on this is, we're going to need experts in drones. So we're going to need young people to be trained on how to use them properly. I like there to be a class, because the next time there's a fire, and there's going to be a fire, there's going to be somebody with a drone looking at it when they shouldn't be. And the question is, how are we going to take down that drone? And the way we're going to do that is young people growing up, learning how to fly them properly, going to college, studying it, and we're going to have a growing field of defensive drones, if you will. So we need the rules for the rule followers, so those people can fly the drones safely and follow those rules. And for the people that are not following rules, well, that's enforcement. But the current status is they break the rules and we can't do much. So they were going to break the rules before, and they weren't going to follow the new rules, maybe. So whatever we do tonight is not addressing the people that weren't going to follow the rules. So we said, don't do it at this park. Then we got to say, well, what when they do? Who do you call? Do you call a park ranger? And what resources does our park ranger have to chase them? They could drive around and try to find the locator and chase them out of there. I did have a question about insurance for Dan. And Dan, when we did this, anything that you do exposes people to possible liability, but did our insurance company express any concern or fear or advice for us?
They did not share. They said that the usage of drones would be covered per our policy, as long as we were diligent about following federal regulation, which that's in the ordinance. So they did not express any concern regarding coverage. They did note that if there are drones out there that cause things, that they could have more exposure. However, in that case, if we're following the rules, the liability theoretically usually follows to the individual user of the apparatus. So, but they didn't express any concern regarding our insurance coverage relative to the use of drones on our property.
I did read the emails that people sent in, and one of your concerns, it seems like the driving concern was horses and the incompatible use. And I'll address that and discuss that later, but a secondary issue that seemed to be in there was about fire safety. It seems like the driving force was equestrian use and horses. For fire safety, I decided I'd start looking online to learn more about that. And one of the things I was having problems with is every time I tried to Google drones and fires, they were talking about how drones monitor fires. There was 2 categories. There's the people that shouldn't be doing it, but also a growing field of monitoring forest fires or trying to watch for them using drones, which brings me back to we need educated drone users. So with that, there's the last part for the Oak Park Committee. I don't want to move fast on adjusting rules, so if there's any rules that we need to adjust tonight, but I would like to hear from the rest of the Oak Park Committee. They seem like they were not all in agreement completely on how to do it, so that would mean at our next Oak Park Committee that we can listen to their input too. For the people in the audience tonight, that might mean we make some adjustments tonight, and then maybe in a few months we make some more adjustments to that policy after getting that feedback. But for the Oak Park Committee, I'd also like to separately, it's a longer discussion, but our meetings are online, and it'd be good if a member was able to review the agendas, and if they saw something of concern, bring it to us, so we could do that. So I'm open to I'd like to frame it as adjusting policy rather than overturning or allowing or not allowing, but saying, well, what needs to be adjusted and fixed, what could be allowed, and what do we put off until we get more input. Lastly, I did see in one email that somebody mentioned a conflict of interest. In my mind, a conflict of interest is when you have a monetary gain from that. So for example, if I play pickleball, I feel fine, I haven't played in a while. If I said we need more pickleball courts, or if I owned a pickleball construction company, I'd see that as a conflict of interest. But just by partaking in an activity, like I also mountain bike, and obviously we build trails, I don't see that as a conflict of interest unless I owned a mountain bike company. So I think any of us could have input on that, whether we fly a drone, which I do not, or own a horse, which I don't have a horse either. That's it for me for now.
Kate, if I could, I asked some questions, but I never gave my comments. If I could.
Go ahead and give your comments.
All right, so first of all, I want to echo something that Brian said. When we even discussed it at the time that we passed the ordinance, and that is that we knew there were possibilities that we were going to have to make adjustments down the road, and we're always willing to do that. And I want to, one other thing I want to emphasize, and I, you know, again, I agree with some of what Elaine said, but one concept that just doesn't apply here is this invasion of privacy idea. Our parks are open to the public. A homeless person, as long as they're not breaking the law, can sleep in our parks. Recreational activities of all kinds can take place in our parks. Just around the time of the pandemic, as it was, we passed an ordinance, and a lot of people didn't even know it was illegal at one time, but to ride bikes and scooters in our parks. That's allowed now, and we have an appreciative community because of that. Families were using our parks. It was their one outlet during the pandemic. So our parks are open to the public. Invasion of privacy is not an issue when you're talking about public parks. Our parks are there to be used, and there to be used for recreational activities. And when we passed this ordinance, the whole concept was there are people who are irresponsible drone users. We wanted to reward those who are responsible drone users and have them give them the opportunity to have their recreational activity. And as Brian also pointed out, there are a lot of positive uses for drones as well. So the idea wasn't to be reckless or wasn't to be irresponsible. It was to reward those who are responsible. Now, the one thing I want to address, and there's just a couple of comments that were made by the public, and Harry and I go back a ways here on the Oak Park Committee, and we kid each other a lot. But as Harry knows, I'm always open to change if that's what the people want. To me, our job as elected officials is to be there and give the people what they want. And so I take very seriously everything that was said here tonight. I don't think the idea of passing the ordinance was a bad idea, but clearly from what we've heard here tonight, we certainly should be considering some adjustment to that. And Harry knows one example. I don't necessarily agree that cutting down that tree was the right idea. But you know, Harry, that the public response was overwhelming, and so I reconsidered that. So I'm always willing to reconsider. I'm always hearing what you have to say. But you also need to understand where we're coming from and what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to encourage reckless behavior. We were trying to reward those who are acting responsibly to use our park district property in the proper way. And that's always what I'm looking at. So, you know, Tim made a couple excellent points. There really are a couple parts to this. On the one hand, look, I love animals. I love my dogs. I've loved every dog or cat that I've ever been around. I've never been a horse owner, but I know horse owners, so I've been around horses. Look, I'm a sucker for animals, and you know, it bothers me if I know that they can be scared by these things. So that's something I'm taking into account, and that's something I care about, and I appreciate all of you sharing that with me. But the other thing we have to remember is, I'm not clear that there's anything about passing this ordinance that has changed anything in terms of the irresponsible usage. That was going on before we passed the ordinance. So perhaps finding ways to deal with that, as Brian mentioned, is a direction that we need to look at. But that issue existed regardless of any newspaper article, whether it misquoted or misunderstood or whatever it was, or any ordinance we passed, that already existed. So at the same time, you know, there are people who use drones responsibly, and it is a recreational activity, and we are a park district, and that's something we need to take into account as well. I appreciate all of your comments and all of your input. I listened to all of it, and I'm going to be considering that with whatever we do going forward. Thank you.
Okay, Josh, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Well said, Ed, and I want to echo that I agree with everything Brian Denner mentioned as well. And Ed, when he's talking about, you know, this is from a positive light and rewarding folks who do want to be good users. And when Brian's talking about, you know, incentivizing folks where, you know, drone users don't have many places to fly right now. And I think, yeah, and it's one of those, there are, you know, there are a lot of industries where drones are growing in use. And I also, separate of Brian Dennert, was Googling drones and wildfire and had a difficult time finding anything other than quotes from fire departments and other groups highlighting how firefighters throughout California are using them not just to do spot fires and put them out and protect homes and property, but they're also using it in spaces where you couldn't get a helicopter, you couldn't get a plane, and able to monitor a fire. And I believe CAL FIRE, some group, has quotes about drones being able to drones using for surveillance and reconnaissance to alert firefighters to evacuate an area when, with the Santa Anas, the fires changed drastically and it's saved lives. That is obviously, you know, a specific instance and specific, you know, special cases with trained operators. But the idea of this ordinance, and I'm the one who introduced it, was from a positive frame of mind. And I also believe I stated when, you know, introducing the concept to the board was, you know, there's going to have to be flexibility here, and this isn't, you know, there was no intent to make this finalized. And I want to say, you know, I appreciate the community, the communities, plural, and people with different opinions coming out and sharing them. I think it's valuable. It's one of those, I doubt Challenger or Coyote would have ever been the drone flying space, but it's informative that, you know, the equestrians right in between those areas. That's an area that is probably a really bad idea to have drone operators enjoying their hobby right there. And I think there's plenty of flexibility for that. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and highlight, you know, the benefit of creating, you know, a positive space. And I think there's also something to be said of the equestrian community can, to a degree, self-police itself. Or one would hope that, you know, when there are bad actors in the equestrian community, that they're able to kind of socialize and talk about it and say, how can we address this issue before it becomes a larger issue in our community? And I think the same thing is needed for the drone community. That right now there's no common meeting place, and you're not going to have folks like, I don't necessarily, folks like, not necessarily David Ibarra, but you want folks who are seasoned professionals, who know the rules, who can provide guidance and leadership and talk about that. And I think the struggle we're facing is drones are relatively new, but you know, the only way we're going to get people to be able to come in and self-police, and you know, there are going to be jobs for drone operators in the future. There are jobs out there now for filming, for firefighting, insurance. Folks use it. Agricultural areas and industry are starting to utilize it. But obviously, the rule needs to be flexible and open to change. And that will conclude my comments.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to speak on this issue. That's good.
May I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to just respond to a few things. Director Avila mentioned that our parks are for everyone to use, and I agree. But when we give a use, I think we have to look at any negative impact that may be coming to users of the park as well.
Of course.
And I think we have to balance that. We have to consider the impact to the people that are using the facilities, whether it's horseback riding or picnicking or softball, or it doesn't matter. If there is a negative impact to the users, then we have to consider that when making policy. I also think there are rules for people that follow rules and rules for people that don't follow rules. But when you open it up, that means that the people that are not following the rules have to be policed. Where if nobody is allowed to use them, then it's easy for a ranger or a park person to say, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to use drones in the park. And they don't have to make a determination whether that person is a rule breaker or not a rule breaker. It's just not allowed. And then people can understand that. Drones are used all over the state by companies for agriculture, for CAL FIRE. Businesses are using them all the time, but those are used specifically for site-specific issues, and they're regulated. And I don't think we can compare the recreation use with those types of uses of drones that are commercially or fire-related, agency-related. I just don't think we can. So I guess the best I can say is that for those drone people who I understand would like a place, that we find a place for them so that they don't interfere with or cause an issue on the trails. If I'm hiking, I don't want a drone over me. So I think our job is to try and locate a location that would allow them to use their drones without interference to the rest of the public using the rest of the facilities. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I say 3 words? Just 3 words?
3 words.
Public safety first.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to thank everyone for coming out, and the woman who had the accident, I'm really sorry to hear about that, and I hope that you're mending. Sounds like it's, yeah. And also the fellow who saw the animals die in the fire. That would haunt me forever if I saw something like that. I tend to vote yes on things like this if people want to use the parks for things, because I have sort of an inclusive mindset, but I can see sometimes you need to dial back and rethink things. Now, I like Director Freeman's idea about coordinating with the model airplane people, and maybe wherever they're doing it, maybe they can take turns with the drone people. Another thought that occurred to me was perhaps we could have a class. Maybe the fellow who gave us, the FAA fellow, would be willing to teach a class on drone operation, and you'd have to take the class before you could operate a drone in our parks. Just a thought. Yeah. So, yeah, that would go a long way toward increasing safety. Also, if it really is a thing where people are going to be having an occupation of being professional drone operators, this would be a good place to start. That might be the first thing we want to do, is reach out to the model plane people, and then maybe start thinking about this class idea. Just a couple of thoughts.
I do like that.
I do like that class idea, because our goal is like the rule followers. I'll give you an example. Before we changed that rule about riding in the park, I wasn't supposed to let my children ride in a park. Now, if you went to any park, people are riding bikes, but I'm looking at the sign like, well, I'm on the park board. I can't have my kids break the rule. So the only people not riding the bikes in the park was me. The whole community was riding a bike in a park. That was a very common thing. So I'm thinking of a family wants to go fly a drone, and we're saying nowhere. That's not good. So they need a place to go if they're going to follow those rules. So I'm good with, because we made a policy to adjust. Dan, if the board tonight said, for now, and we can adjust as we go along, not to use the open space around Coyote and Challenger, is that something you're able to do?
I'll defer to Mr. Brian Perrix, our legal counsel. So right now we have an ordinance that allows for that. I'll ask Brian if there's a way for us to limit the use until we can get back to the item, potentially.
I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I don't remember there being a provision that gave Dan the authority to make modifications to it. And if the board were to make modifications, that would have to be in the form of an amendment to the ordinance.
Well, we did give them the flexibility to, for established parks. So we could just say a perimeter around that park to include those parks. Established park is Coyote Park and the circle around it.
Yeah, again, Coyote Park and Challenger itself are considered developed, so we have the ability now to not allow it there, but it's in that open space. So I'm okay with, I'm okay with that, but I think that's up to Brian, Mr. Pierrick.
Brian, you did give us advice on that, but I'm asking, we already have the authority within the ordinance to say which parks are not allowed. Just say those 2 parks in the surrounding area. I can't imagine a drone operator's looking at those 2 parks and saying, I want to be there.
Excuse me, did you?
Well, my understanding, the way the ordinance is currently written is that it doesn't allow the use of drones in your parks. It does allow the use of drones in open space. Am I right on that, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's what the ordinance says, that's what the rules are. So if you're going to change the rules, you would need to amend the ordinance to change them to whatever it is you want to change them to.
Brian, are you saying that's required at 3 meetings? Or is that amendment we can make easier than that?
Well, no, legally, the only way you can amend an ordinance is with an ordinance. So you can't do it just on a motion or a resolution. So it would take a first reading and a second reading.
Right, my other question to that is, we might need to do that at a future meeting, but my understanding is, Dan, you currently have the authority at, well, I'll call them built parks, and we were to consider the open space right around it a part of that as far as the purpose of this ordinance. You think you have that flexibility?
We have a line that we considered open space and developed. So the problem is we get into the conversation and blurs that. I would mention, Brian, that if during the interim period when the board's considering this and taking the input, if there are abusers of the drones in the open space, if there's folks that are not using them correctly, we could set up directly to the rangers and stop that use in the open space.
So that means that we could direct the rangers to pay a little bit more attention to those 2 places?
Correct. I could put them on call, so if we had any drone abuse in the open space in this interim period, we'd make that a high priority for the rangers to address that in the open space.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to bring the ordinance back?
I'll have Mr. Pierrick assist on that. Part of what we're talking about is ordinance, the law, and the space, and part of it is policy. So it depends on if you want to look at the ordinance to restrict locations that are currently allowed in there, we bring back the ordinance. If we're talking about rules and kind of things that are required, that's more of a policy. So it depends on, you could bring back both. So normally I'd work with Mr. Pierrick. We'd probably, if it were to come back, we'd bring it back, we'd take some direction from the board and get some parameters for either changes to the ordinance or adding a policy. And then we'd take that input and then we'd bring back a specific written amendments to the ordinance or a specific written policy.
Just so we're taking one thing at a time, I just want to, on Brian's suggestion, I just want to be clear, and if I'm wrong on this, correct me, Dan. So we've never allowed, and we still do not allow, the illegal or improper use of drones, whether it's in open space or anywhere. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
That was the case before, and that's still the case now with the ordinance.
Correct.
And so what Brian Dennert is requesting is that we, in terms of the improper or illegal use of open space, particularly in those areas that we've discussed tonight, is that we basically monitor that more, and so there's nothing about that would be a change in the ordinance. That would just strictly be a policy decision or even just a directive to the staff in terms of how to handle that situation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I am open to sorry.
Excuse me, my point is that if we just change rules that say we can take a bad drone flyer off the open space, that doesn't solve the problem. They're still drones.
Elaine, the reason I brought that up is regardless of what we do with that, and I'm listening to everything. I don't, we can't make that decision tonight. So what Brian Dennert was saying, in the meantime, as a matter of direction from the board, that we, regardless of what we decide to do, whether we change anything, whether we don't change anything, whether we completely, whatever we decide to do in the meantime, that we go forward with a policy of monitoring that activity closer. That's the
I
suggestion.
agree we could modify the policy this evening, but I think we need to bring the ordinance back in order to
Yes.
modify the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, we do. It's legally we have to
Talking
do
about what
that.
we would be doing in the meantime.
Do it incrementally.
Well, if we don't follow Brian's suggestion, then that means until, whatever we do with the ordinance, until it goes through 3 readings, we would be doing nothing. With Brian's suggestion, we can't change it tonight, according to what Brian Pierrick said. So what Brian Dennert was suggesting in the meantime is that we at least monitor the illegal use or the improper use in the open space areas, which is probably a sound suggestion.
I agree.
Okay.
I would go along with that.
Because our limitation on modifying tonight, that's a good limitation, and the reason for that is it allows public input in a variety of neighborhoods to come to another meeting. But the reason I bring that up is, my personal opinion is, if it's incompatible, as you mentioned, in a particular area, I'm really open to that argument of it's incompatible in a particular area. But I wouldn't want to say it's just incompatible everywhere. Now that said, I don't own a drone. I looked it up. They were a little bit more expensive than I was interested in. I don't actually like when I'm in the open space and I see a drone, but I get that it's not always what I like. So I'm thinking Alamos Canyon, the place on our trail guide on the cover. I can't imagine there's a big conflict there versus other places, because almost every time I've ever been there, I see 1 or 2 other people in the entire place. It's massive. So I wouldn't want to say, well, in an equestrian area, we don't want them to be there. So therefore, it shouldn't be anywhere, including Alamos Canyon, where I'm going to guess today a total of 10 people were in that park the entire day, throughout the day. And that's an up estimate on that. So when it does come back to us, I just want to say I'm open to a particular place that was incompatible, but not the idea that it's just incompatible everywhere.
Well, so I think Elaine made a motion, and I'm going to second it without any comment in terms of what my position is, because I want to research this more, and if there's more to hear from the public, I want to hear from the public. But I will second Elaine's motion that we bring this back to look at the ordinance.
Okay.
Chair, if I could, just for direction, it's probably a 3-step process, and I'll look to Mr. Pierrick. One would be to get direction from the board on how you might want us to make changes specifically, and then we'd bring back an ordinance for first reading and second reading if the board were to choose to do that. So the first step was, what we would do is we'd bring back an item with the ordinance. You guys would give us some direction or parameters on how you want Mr. Pierrick or I to rewrite the ordinance, and then we'd bring that back again.
Director Dennert's comment to maybe limit it to our hiking trails and not allow it on any horse property or horse trails. I don't know if we'll be able to monitor that well enough. That's just one thought. That's what you were thinking, Director Denner?
I agree. Ed will probably say it better than me.
No, I just want to say, I mean, I'm hearing everything. I just think this is really a discussion for when we bring it back, is what I'm trying to say. So I've seconded Elaine's motion that we bring it back, which is the most we can do with that part of it tonight, other than, there's really 2 things. So I'm going to second Elaine's motion, and then I'm going to make another motion in regard to what Brian said. So I'll second Elaine's motion that we bring back the discussion of the ordinance.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote on that.
Josh was raising his hand.
I apologize, Chair. For this specific motion, Director Freeman, would you mind expressing what the motion is again?
To bring the ordinance back for modification.
Just to be clear, I think it was for discussion.
Well,
I guess it's the same, to consider modification.
Yeah, same thing.
To review, basically. We're not saying we're going to do anything or not doing anything. We're going to discuss and then give staff direction.
Is that clearly, we're bringing it back to, you got that, Josh? Director Gray?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Yes. Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Dennert?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray?
Aye.
Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Ed, I know you have another motion.
Well, you can make the motion if you want.
I don't know if I have one, but before we get to that, Dan, I was just going to ask about a timeline for that. Because I asked that it go in front of the Oak Park Committee. I know they're welcome to our meetings. We're on Zoom. They could participate, but it'd be a little bit easier to get feedback from all of them. How does that work, that timeline?
There's several options. One is you could have it on their next agenda, their next regular meeting agenda, and wait for them to give you an opinion or get a vote from them, a recommendation to you before you hear it. The second item is because it's kind of already in the board's purview, any of the members from the committee could attend and express their position. The third option would be for them to have a special meeting to consider the item in advance of sooner than April 2nd, then we could bring it back quicker to your board. So those are your three options. I would anticipate we could bring this item back as soon as our next meeting. We have a couple other items on there, namely the BMX track discussion. So we could bring it back on March 2nd or March 16th, I believe.
Please don't bring it back on March 16th. That may be unavailable.
Right. So it'd either be March 2nd, which again, given the time frames here, we could do that, or it would be the first meeting in April. So
When is that, and the Oak Park Committee was when in April?
it's the second Thursday in April. I guess that would, or April 14th. So if you wanted to wait for their committee to officially review it and advise, it would come back to you after April 14th.
Dan, can we do this? Just as district manager, you reach out to a couple members of the Oak Park Committee and ask if they'd like an emergency meeting if they're available. Emergency seems a little dramatic, but
It's a special meeting.
a special meeting, we'll call it a special meeting. Just reach out to a couple of them, ask if they want a special meeting. If they do not, we'll put it in April. But I definitely just want to have them meet either way before.
And if it's on your agenda, any of them can attend that. Say it's on March 2nd or the first meeting in April, any individuals, just like tonight, can attend and weigh in with you guys rather than taking the step of officially running it through their committee.
So you could work with a few members of the committee and the chair on the scheduling.
Yep.
But I'd also ask anyone that attended tonight, we have your speaker card through email. We'll let them know when it's going to be back on our agenda.
And then I'd also note when that comes back, that the other folks that are here that I have a record of will notify you of when it's going to be agendized from at any time, and you can call us at any time or email us also.
Thank you. Point of clarification.
Yes. Mr. Bishop, go ahead.
Didn't you say that the staff has the ability to determine specific areas of the community parks?
In developed parks.
In the developed parks, so why can't you do that for Challenger Park? Is that not?
It's already not allowed there, so we're not going to allow it. So yeah, that's already in
But I'm
place.
just saying, like, Oak Canyon, you said that's not happening, it's not happening, despite the fact that the press release indicated it might.
The press release did not indicate that.
It indicated that staff would look at specific areas of community parks. So I'm just wondering, can't you say, we're not gonna have them in Oak Canyon, we're not gonna have them in Challenger Park?
I can do that now, yes. I cannot do that in
Do that, just say
just
not
to-
in Challenger Park, not in Oak Canyon.
It's where it's already in place.
It's already the case,
Harry.
Harry.
Harry, that is the way it is. There's nothing to be said. That is the way it is. It's not allowed there.
It's not allowed in any developed
can't-
parks.
We can't say, there's nothing else we can say. It's not allowed at those locations. That article, for whatever reason, I don't know the details, for whatever reason, that article was inaccurate. It's not allowed there.
So
It never has been allowed there.
It is allowed in specific areas of developed parks. Can you give us a list at the next meeting?
No, it's not, Harry. It's not allowed. It's allowed in the open space. It is not allowed in any developed
Your
parks.
press release, look on your website, it says in open space and specific areas of developed parks. Give us a list of where it's allowed, give us a list of the hours. If somebody wants to buzz me in my open space at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, can they do that? I think you guys have to think of the details. It's just such a general policy thing.
Let me try to explain this. The ordinance says that it allows the staff to establish, or the board establish, specific designated areas. None of those have been allowed right now. So those areas you're speaking of, so you're misinterpreting the language in the press release. The way you're reading, I can see why you're reading it that way, but it's also, if you read it the other way. So right now, there's no Coyote Park, Challenger Park, Oak Canyon Community Park. None of those parks have been designated as a space to fly, which means they're not allowed.
But it sounded like you were open to looking at specific parks.
That is a next step, yes, but not now.
If you decide that, let us know which parks.
We will not decide that until we talk about it as a part of this discussion. So as of now, that will stay in place. No developed parks, including Coyote Park or Challenger Park or Oak Canyon Community Park, is allowed for drone use. And it won't be until we discuss it further.
Okay, all right. We're done with that issue. Anybody else?
Did you want to make a motion on the monitoring of or direction to the staff?
Dan, do you need a motion for that? I'm just asking for those two parks with a lot of equestrian use.
If the board would like to direct staff through a motion, sure.
And I will make a motion that our rangers are available and monitor more those two particular locations, the open space, for the safety of drone use, and they're following the rules.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay.
If I could, Chair, before we vote, I'd also note that the folks in the community up in the Bridle Path or any of these areas where the HOA, I will, if you want to reach out, I'll give you a specific number you can call. So if you guys kind of monitor it during this period and you see any abuse, we'll give you a direct line to call so that I can get folks out there to direct the potential abusers of it. So.
Real quick, where do drones fall in trail etiquette? Like, who comes first? Usually the horse, bikers will wait, horses pass, walkers wait, runners pass.
I see what you're saying. Usually we have a diagram.
Yes.
At our next meeting, I'm going to bring up with staff that once we get all the rules, and the rules aren't very clear, we'll maybe establish a website with that diagram saying, here's the rules, and make it an infographic so it's easier to understand. And then if you encounter somebody, maybe you can ask them, hey, the rules are right there on the website, go look here. And then if we need to modify the rules on the website, it'll be the same website with whatever modifications.
Yeah, I just want you to take into consideration where you would put drones as far as everybody else, so that's all. Thank you.
And I just want to make a comment after seconding Director Dennert's motion. I do agree with the member of the audience who said public safety first. I think the whole board feels that way, and that's why we're doing this interim measure of additional monitoring. Well, we made the motion. We haven't done it yet, but I'm going to take a wild stab and we're going to pass that. So.
All right. We ready for a roll call?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Dennert?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray?
Aye.
Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Okay. I'm going to call a 7-minute recess so we can reconvene at 8:45. Is called back to order at 8:48. Looks like.
Sorry, Chair. I'm not sure your mic is on.
Oh, okay. It's on. It's showing as on. Is it? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Alex, are we,
We're unmuted.
Josh, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'll adjust the volume on my end.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. We're going to go back to continued business, item 8A, review and provide direction regarding before and after school club and teen club proposed fee increases for school year 2022 to 2023.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Mr. Miller will provide the first part of the report, and then the Board had asked me for some more information on the budget, so I will add on to Zach's report after he's complete.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair O'Brien, Board of Directors. On February 2nd, the Board considered an item to consider the after-school club fees and creating a scholarship grant program at the after-school clubs for the 2022-2023 school year. Staff was given direction to bring back some alternatives for a tiered scholarship program that could expand eligibility for the program or give deeper discounts for families in need or below the federal poverty level. Staff was also asked to consider some budgetary impact to fees increases and the scholarship program. Staff has included a chart in your packet tonight that shows the revenues associated with each proposed fee increase and the alternatives for consideration. In the alternatives for the scholarship programs proposed, staff has outlined proposed tiers and subsequent discounts for consideration as well. As you know, the ASC is currently offered care for approximately 450 kids at the 8 elementary school locations. There are other providers who are currently providing after-school care at other parts of the community. Those providers are the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, some private and nonprofit organizations. The ACES program, as you recall, provides on-campus after-school care at no cost for child care for those families that need that financial assistance. Current enrollment still falls well short of our peak enrollment during pre-COVID. Decreases in enrollment in the after-school clubs are still attributed to parent apprehension, the COVID numbers, increased opportunities to work from home or virtually, and just permanent changes in habits that we've noticed in the club. As you will recall, the board did approve a 3% increase in the 2021-2022 school year to the after-school club fees. So tonight we're going to talk about the continuing rise in goods and services associated with the ASC, mostly in labor and a little bit in supplies. Part-time staff fee adjustments driven by minimum wage increases resulted in a 6.7 increase this past year in our part-time salary scale for the 40 counselors in the ASC clubs. Staffing continues to be concerned for the program as we are currently able to staff the clubs, but any increase in enrollment in 2022 or 23 would increase the need to recruit more qualified staff to maintain the quality of the program. The current 2021-2022 school year is expected to produce revenues of $1,354,760 with an operating cost of $1,874,000, resulting in an approximate $519,248 subsidy. Enrollment numbers are not expected to match pre-COVID conditions next year, which will inevitably produce another year of some sort of subsidy. Staff will provide these impacts in more detail via the budget process over the coming months. You do have a chart in your packet this evening that shows the impact of each to revenues for each of the fee increases in your alternatives. Essentially, every 3% increase that you have before you would result in about a $50,000 increase in revenues to the ASC program budget. These fees could be broken down hourly or daily if the board so chooses, and I do have those numbers if you would like to consider those. Moving on to the grant scholarship program, which I think is the core of what we're bringing back this evening. The before and after school club and teen club programs offer currently a 20% discount for those that meet the eligibility requirements, which is 200% below the federal poverty level. Staff has developed some alternatives to modify the current program to offer a greater percentage discount to families that already meet the criteria, or to expand the qualifications to the additional families that would qualify for the 20% off. Allocated funds would be awarded to participants based on predetermined qualifications that are in line with income levels identified at the federal, state, and county level. Staff has developed the alternatives below as a framework for discussion for the grant scholarship program for consideration for you this evening. So the alternatives that we've kind of based all of this information on is at a $30,000 grant level. Now there was some conversation about an increased amount at the last meeting. I can explain what those increased numbers would mean to the number of people we could serve based on a $50,000 grant scholarship program. Okay, so the alternatives proposed provide just the basis for this discussion, and we can move the money available, the amount of discount, or the number of children the board would like to serve for this program. So this is all at your discretion this evening. It would also be helpful to know if the board would like to allocate a certain number of discounts at each eligibility level, meaning we would only allocate so many at each tier in the system to make sure that those monies are available for lower tier or upper tier families. So that would be something that I would look for some direction on this evening. That means that if all the money was allocated for the children at the 200% level, there would potentially not be monies available for those in greater need should they arise once the money is allocated. Staff currently has a difficult time in anticipating exactly where the need is going to come from. So we would like to leave some spots available for the lowest income children based on some of the feedback we've given, and we can talk about those allocations in our discussion this evening. So alternative one in your packet is a two-tier system. Tier one increases the funding to currently qualifying participants under the discount program that are currently receiving about a $750 grant scholarship program, and increases that to a $1,000 grant scholarship. Tier two of that same alternative would extend the offering for qualifying participants at 149% or below poverty to obtain a $1,250 grant scholarship. It's estimated this alternative would serve approximately 25 to 30 participants if $30,000 was allocated. And at $50,000 for this program, it could serve approximately 35 to 45 children, depending on their income eligibility. We've broken down those numbers and showed you the estimated percent off that each of those tiers would provide in your packet this evening. Tier 1 would be a 30% discount approximately. Tier 2 would be a 37% discount should you choose that alternative. I'm sorry, 30 would be Tier 1, approximately 30% discount would be on the Tier 1 of Alternative 1. And Tier 2, which would be for the higher poverty levels, would be $1,250 discount, which equates to about a 37% discount. We have an alternative 2 for you that proposes a 3-tier system. There was some discussion at the last meeting to allow people above 200%, maybe 225% or 250% of the income level to qualify. So we've created a kind of a tier system based on that. This tier increases funding to currently qualifying participants from an approximate $750 scholarship to a $1,000 grant scholarship. And Tier 3 provides additional funding to 149% of the poverty level with a grant scholarship of $1,250. And this is estimated that would serve 30 to 35 participants at $30,000, or roughly 40 to 45 children if we were to allocate $50,000. Those numbers are below. Tier 1 of that program, 225% of the poverty level to 201% would give basically a 22% discount in the program. Tier 2 of that would provide the 30% discount, and Tier 3 would be a 37% discount. The final alternative before you this evening is a 2-tier system, but with greater and deeper discounts. Tier 1 increases funding to currently qualified participants from $750 to $1,250, and Tier 2 extends the offerings for qualifying at 149% or below to a $1,500 grant scholarship. It's estimated this alternative would serve approximately 20 to 25 children and about 35 children if we allocated $50,000 to the program. So the tiers for that would be at 200% of the poverty level to 150%, you would get a 37% discount. And in Tier 2 of that, 149% and below, you would receive a 44% discount. So staff is requesting this evening that the Board of Directors review these alternatives and provide direction to us. Staff is also recommending the Board of Directors review the alternatives for the before and after school club fees and provide direction to staff as well. The alternatives for fee increases are included in your report this evening as well and have not changed since our report last meeting. This can be accomplished by separate motions or one motion before you, or before each item before you. And for reference, I do have some copies of emails that were submitted to the board on this item in advance of the meeting on February 2nd, along with the emails that were read into the record by the district manager at the last meeting. We have received one additional email since the distribution of the agenda, and I would be happy to read that for you into the record should you wish to hear that. And that kind of concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Oh, actually, the district manager wanted to add some comments to this.
I did want to hear that email too.
Okay, thank you.
So what I don't do mine. Zach, why don't you go ahead and read that email now,
okay.
And then I'll make my comments on the budget.
So we did receive one additional email after the meeting last 2 weeks ago. The email is from Megan Von Frausing-Borch, and it says, I do not support the after-school rate increase. It will disproportionately affect socioeconomically disadvantaged families. Additionally, on-site care is limited to one organization on each campus, and this unfairly targets specific schools.
Okay.
May I just ask one question before you do that? Because I've read this a number of times and I heard what Zach said. I just want to understand. So on the grant scholarship program alternatives, is this based on, are these alternatives based on $30,000 being allocated to that? I just want to.
Correct. So the tiers that we've created is based on $30,000 for the entirety of the report. The numbers of children served, I just did verbally, and that's based on $50,000.
But that being said,
I'm confused. That's
let me. So yes, the tiers and the alternatives were given. The model is based on a $30,000 allocation to the program. That being said, the board could add funds to the 30. So you could do it at 40 or you could do it at 50. But the alternatives and the percentages would be the same. The 40 or 50 would give you either more kids that you could offer it to, or if you added dollars to the program, you could increase the amounts of the scholarships.
But by, I just want to be clear, so when you say more kids, you mean at either more kids at higher income levels or higher scholarships for the income levels indicated here.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's say the average scholarship was 1,000, you could service 30 kids.
Okay.
If the average was 1,000 and you wanted 50,000, you could offer it to 50 kids.
Okay, I just wanted to know. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the board asked us to kind of review the budget situation relative to the total district budget and how this evening's decision may impact the overall budget outlook. So as the board knows, we don't develop the budget until later in the year, so I did some, I would say, educated rough math to give you a feel for what our budget process may look like next year. And I will say, if you have any questions after I'm done, I can go through that, and I will try not to spend too much time on this. I'll summarize it. The numbers I'm going to give you are exclusive of your decision tonight. So it doesn't include 0.36%, and it doesn't include the 50. So anything that the baseline I'm talking about doesn't include any revenue or no revenue that you may consider tonight. One thing I do want to do is I want to discuss the fee portion separate from the scholarship program portion. Director Avila mentioned at the last meeting there's several ways to build a budget, and he is absolutely correct. There are. So they're kind of two different concepts, so I want to talk about them separately. So relative to the fees, my best estimate now going into next year in the general fund is that we should have a range of new revenue of about $450,000 to $550,000. It could be 500, it could be somewhere in that range. That is primarily from growth in our property tax. So our property tax has been growing pretty big. And then we've also, if you guys will recall, we increased the facility fees, I think in December, by a percentage. So that would include that and some other, and perhaps some additional interest income. So on the high level, maybe between $450,000 to $500,000 in new revenue that we will be able to consider next year. On the expense side, I'm estimating that those costs that we commonly talk about are going to increase $440,000. So these are the costs that we can't control. They're bills that are sent to us by other folks. So for example, our general liability insurance is projected to go up 15% next year. That's about $100,000. Our water rates are expected to go up about 6.5%. That's about $120,000. Our electricity, I'm estimating, is going to go up about $50,000 just because the rate increases. And our retirement costs, I'm estimating at about $100,000 going into next year. Also, when we had increased minimum wage this year and we did the part-time pay schedule, we only budgeted 6 months of that. So when we annualize that and do it over 12 months, we've got to add another $60,000 to the budget. So a range, let's take the middle ground in the range, $500,000 in revenue, and we've got about $440,000 that could be additional fixed costs for us, which gives us a margin of $60,000 of additional revenue for other things that, just kind of educated guess. There are some areas within the base budget that we could consider rolling back. We could roll back some part-time positions, say in maintenance or recreation. We could look at the Mustang marketing item. We could look at, we added the internship program, but there's some kind of, I call it low-hanging fruit, where you could probably, without too much pain, reduce 100. So I'm saying additional revenue, you could have between, anywhere between maybe $60,000 and $150,000 of revenue. I'm going to summarize that up in a moment in my closing comments. The scholarship program, and again, that's completely within the board's authority, whether you want to do 20, 30, 40, 50, or whatever number you want to allocate to the scholarship program. Optimally, the scholarship program would be built into the base budget because it's an ongoing thing. We want ongoing revenue to cover it. So optimally, it would come out of that. That being said, as the board's aware, we do have some one-time money. We've got money from the COVID relief, and we've got some savings in the budget that's generating. So we could treat that as a one-time program. I do kind of view it as kind of a pilot. We're trying this out. We don't know what the data is going to yield yet. We don't know who's going to take advantage of it. So probably budgetarily, I would try to build it in the base budget if we had capacity to do that. If we don't, I'll treat it as kind of a one-time thing, and then as we get more data, we would try to recommend building that into the ongoing budget as it became a more ongoing program. So in conclusion, I guess, is we can probably make this work, depending on what levels you guys decide on this thing. The margin is small. We've got revenue of this and fixed costs that are pretty much eating all of that up. We would not have a whole lot of additional revenue for other things that we might want to do. I would remind the board that we have employee negotiations that we go through every year. And the CPI is high right now, so there's a little room there. So in next year, we could probably make this work. Beyond next year, as we've talked about, and the board's fully aware, is that our revenues, if property tax flattens a little, or if we don't keep pace with these costs that are going up, let's say over next year or a year, instead of getting 500 in revenue, we start to get 350, our fixed costs are exceeding the amount, could exceed the amount of revenue we do. That's a place where we're in a situation where we got to start cutting the budget and making some decisions on service levels. So next year, we can probably make it work. The margin is small. Again, this could all change in 2 months as we get more budget data and information. And then looking forward, we are, as we've talked about, if the fees or whatever taxes don't keep pace with that 5.76% growth in expenses, those lines are going to cross, and we'll be in a position where the general fund will be structurally unbalanced, and we'll have to make some decisions to balance it. So that concludes the budget part. One caveat to that, we're also in an environment where our revenue from the programs, as we know, is about 75% of normal. So that's considering kind of normal. We still don't know how we're going to bounce back from the programs. Right now, our rec revenue is about 75% of normal. So this assumption includes us potentially getting our programs coming back to normal in the next year or two, but that may not happen. So that concludes our report, I believe. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to clarify.
I have a couple of questions about scholarship raising funds. Have we reached out to the city? They have block grant money or waste management money?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So if we started this program on the scholarship concept, I would think we'd have opportunity to potentially, I met with the Kiwanis last week. They were interested in helping the education arena. We could say, if there's opportunities there, we could say, hey, Kiwanis, you can fund 5 scholarships or 7 or 8. So I think there would be opportunity around the scholarship concept to maybe some of those large community organizations that want to put some money in for those in, at-risk youth, or those that want to get some help. We could approach those to help fund this program. That was another part of my thought of kind of treating this as a one-time this year until we figure it out. If it's successful and we have need, we could approach those groups and ask for some donations or sponsorships.
Yeah. Right. I mean, a real dream would be to get enough money into the scholarship program that the scholarships are totally funded by interest.
I would say it's different than fundraising and bake sales. I would think that around a scholarship program and maybe community donations, that would be more likely where we could achieve that goal, yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Director Ray? I happened to bump into the superintendent of schools.
Yes.
And he said that, I know he had a conversation about this, and he said that he's anticipating next year a large sum for after school and other programs that he's hoping we would implement. So I would like to find out more about that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if he's talked to you.
He has not.
But he said it's directed at after school and before school programming.
That is excellent, yeah.
And it's a sizable sum, which the school board at this point anyway is not interested in operating it. So I would like to follow up on that before he leaves.
It was Dr. Poplinski?
Yes.
Okay, we'll reach out to him.
Yeah, it was quite sizable, several million.
Okay.
I had some questions about that.
Go ahead.
My first thought to it, though, is I don't want to cut quality, and sooner or later we end up cutting quality, or people in the future are needing to balance the budget. So I don't want to cut the quality of the after-school club, because if we're offering a substandard quality product, but it's a really good price, then the value is not there. I would like to do more work as a board to bend the curve, or bend the cost, rather than just shift it. So if we subsidize it more, and that's good, we're just shifting the cost from one program to another, rather than reducing the cost. And what I mean by that is like that program that I mentioned before. You get college credit, and you get not college credit, but money towards college and working there. Well, that is something that moves towards curving or shifting the cost, not from person to person, but reducing the cost in total. But Dan, you mentioned something about the internship program. What were you saying about that?
I was just saying some of the items that we've added in the last few years, maybe a low-hanging fruit. If we got a position in the budget where that's the prioritization. So if I was saying we have a margin of 650 to, or 660,000 to 150. If that didn't meet our needs for other things that come up in the budget, those are some of the things we could consider to cut.
What was the status of that? The internship program?
We've got one intern already hired, and is working in recreation, and we're working on hiring one in admin. So, yeah. So I don't mention that specifically. I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
So the things that we've added to the budget in the last few years are probably the things that are the newer things that would be more, Ed said, realistic. To look at cutting versus, say, eliminating a maintenance position or eliminating a management position or something.
And I know, Zach, that we're estimating and doing our best to predict, and at a certain point it's guessing. But if we don't recover those numbers, if next year the number stays about 75% participation rate, regardless of what we do tonight, what happens to our programs at that point? Like the middle school program, does it continue?
I think the board would be looking at a subsidy kind of comparable to your subsidy this year. If numbers are flat and rates are the same, I would anticipate that you'd be somewhere in that same neighborhood of that $500,000 subsidy going into next year's budget.
Is there any reason that you would think it is going to recover? Because maybe I'm being pessimistic. I don't see anything shifting between here and August, as far as a lot of families have already adjusted. They start paying somebody else. Some work from home is not going away. Like I know a lot of people that now work from home, and their employers are not bringing them back. So I'm guessing it's not going to shift, but I'm only guessing.
Yeah, I think staff's committed to trying everything possible to get kids back in the program, but I think if you're asking for our professional recommendation right now, I don't think it's very likely to be at 700 kids next year, kind of back to our pre-COVID peak. I think if we were 500 to 550, we would consider that kind of a success going into next year, quite honestly, with the anticipation that over the next few years we could build back up to those pre-COVID numbers.
So if I could explain that from the larger budget perspective, we'd have to reduce the revenue in our registration programs by, I think it's 700,000, and then we'd reduce the expenditures primarily in the part-time staffing, because we wouldn't need as many staff. And then there's going to be a nexus there, probably of about $200,000 that we'll have to build into our balanced budget. So my plan now is to use some of that one-time money to fill that during COVID, to see if, give it a year to see if we get back to normal. But that's that runs out after some period of time. So it's probably about a $200,000 budget adjustment to our base budget, next year or the year after or something.
And I also do believe that our after-school club workers and other staff, if we said there was no pay raise next year with the inflation that we're currently experiencing, no pay raise is a cut. I mean, all costs are going up. If we just said next year we're not available to provide any pay raise at all, that doesn't feel like flat, that feels like a cut to me.
It would be a cut, yeah.
I just wanted to comment too, this is all a moving target. Like Elaine said, I just heard that Dr. Poplinski may have some after-school club revenue, so that could help us too. So things change almost quite routinely. So.
We have a fantastic after-school program. We have a fantastic staff. They've got a good reputation in the community, and maybe COVID things will not change. I mean, maybe there'll continue to be more people working at home, But I see among people wanting to get their kids back in school, wanting to get back to normal, which is going to school and having them participate after school. So I think that's just a desire to get back to having a normal life. So because we have such a good program, I think we need to, and we're subsidizing, with COVID, we're subsidizing over $2,000 per student in the program with the 519,000. So we are helping the children, we are helping the parents right now, and we have a good program for those who need the help. So I'm not sure how much further we need to go at this point. I would like to see it have an increase in revenue so that we can maintain the quality of the program. And maybe set aside and have additional scholarships available. But I think we need to look at the actual operation and costs associated with the program. And since we are already subsidizing on a per pupil basis, we need to decrease that amount that we're subsidizing to cover the program.
I prefer increases that are slight rather than no increases for many years and then a sudden increase.
Yeah.
Like I would not want to say 3, and then 1 year it's 9. So I think if you don't raise fees for a few years and then suddenly raise fees really large all at once.
That's going to be a bigger shock to a working family than doing it gradually, I would think.
And give them time to adjust and determine if that's a valuable program to them.
Because it says a 3% increase is $10 a month per kid, so.
And if I could, you're kind of already at that point, because we're saying over the last 3 years, the expenses have gone up 9. So doing 3, so that's kind of what we're saying. Now, what I'm telling you is we can probably, in this year's budget, make that work, but we're already kind of at that point because the expenses are there, so.
I would like to see a high quality program and I want to see us add to it. I've had conversations with our staff about the balance between helping kids with homework and a recreation program. Both of those are valuable things. So if I lean more towards getting their homework done and someone else is more towards recreation, it's not an all or one thing. But part of that is hiring high quality staff that can actually help them with their homework. So I wouldn't want to make it at a point where our clubs are open, but it's not the same thing. I look forward to the day where we add an outdoors program, and we add a professional element that the students in it will learn about our local environment here, and then they'll grow up respecting it, valuing it, and protecting it. But it's hard to think of ways to improve it at the same time cutting expenditures. I'm also open if we find out more from the school district. If more money comes our way, I would be really ready to pump that into our scholarship program.
I'll talk. Nobody else went. Yeah, let Josh go first. I want Josh to go.
So I have some thoughts. I'm going to try and keep them based to just what I think we should do. I think in terms of budget, while I agree that this is to a degree a pilot program, I also think since this would replace the 20%, I think it's not something we should try and budget with one-time money. I think we should try to consider this an ongoing cost in the budget and act accordingly on that. And then I think when it comes to of the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 for tier systems to actually address that, I think because we don't know what the numbers are going to be and what that's going to mean for the program, my current assessment of that would mean alternative 3, which helps the students in the hardest position the most, who we know some of those students aren't going to be there. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor, and alternative 3 provides that. We know students, we know those working families are there. We know we can help them now. I think we should definitely focus on, I don't think I'd be in support of anything below 30,000. I'd like to see it a lot higher. But knowing that there's the possibility of other funds, I think I could accept 30,000 but I wouldn't feel comfortable giving a 6 or 9% increase without also increasing that 30,000 to 40,000 and trying to help more of the people who would participate. I think at the current 30,000 under alternative 3, you're providing a steep discount to the families who are hardest hit by these fee increases, and I could support a 3% increase if we're at least helping those who are least able to afford the increase. And I just want to put it a different perspective. I know we talk about it's only $10 a month. The reality is it's only a $10 change a month. It's still $350 a month if you're if you're a single mom with a child there. I don't want to lose sight of, the change matters. And me saying I would support a 3% increase, I don't take lightly, and I don't take the $10 change lightly. I think this hurts working families, and I think the only way I would support that is a steep discount, like an alternative 3, where people at the poverty line are getting a 44% discount. I think that's worthwhile. And then I hope fellow board members would join me in not being passive on going out in the community and raising funds and visiting local community groups and really pitching this as an opportunity to help the community. I had another thought, but I've spaced on it. But I'm also happy to answer any questions if somebody has noticed a gap in my thinking.
I'm sensing that motions might be coming, but I want to address something that's not in this report. In an earlier meeting, people had mentioned a case-by-case basis, like if someone can't pay a single penny, but their teacher or their principal really thinks that family needs to have that child in there. Dan, what's your recommendation? How do we address that? Like, I know it's maybe a part of the budget of 30,000, but if I said whatever the motion is, if there's a case-by-case, like a homeless family hardship case, they're not going to be able to provide this documentation, they're not going to be able to pay 50%.
I would give, and the staff can give their comments as well, but I think I'd give the district manager or the staff the same flexibility. So if they couldn't prove a certain income level, they could come in and say, hey, I lost my job last week. We could kind of have a conversation. Can you give us a current pay stub? Those kind of things. So you could take the scholarship program and the eligibility criteria and then get with the district manager on a case-by-case basis. The civil
and then that's related to that flexibility. What if a family couldn't pay even 25%? Obviously, we might not be able to accommodate them all, but if their principal or teacher says this particular child really needs this child care, that's different than they have an alternative. How do I
think that's a little gray on that part. So if you want to do that, I would almost set aside, I need some criteria around that piece of it. So on one piece, on the eligibility, I can get some flexibility on changing circumstances. So just my thought, I'll have the staff weigh in or Josh or anybody else, but that second scenario would be a little tougher.
I definitely have a thought on that. Because I think that is an important gap to try to address. And that is one thing that would actually be easier to sell to the local community of, can you help these people? It's not help them get a discount, it's help provide childcare for a family who simply cannot afford it and a child does not have an alternative. But Dan, I would assume in order to take that money and use it that way, you would need a direction from the board to say,
correct. I'm going to have this.
That.
I'll have the staff weigh in too, because they do this every day. I would say in those scenarios, and there are other opportunities for the family that's in that scenario also, through a different program. But if the board wanted us to address that, and maybe Danielle or Richard, maybe your expertise can weigh in on the topic now, the subject.
Yeah, just to piggyback the thought that Dan was alluding to. The vast majority of times in this scenario, it's a pretty unique scenario that you're outlining. A lot of times that the school district would intervene and they would utilize some of their resources at the schools where those that are need a little bit more socioeconomic help tend to reside at schools that we are not on existing campuses on. So I would say the vast majority of the time when that unique situation presents itself, that school district intervention seems to solve the problem. I'll let Danielle piggyback on that though.
piggyback on. We have seen a couple of unique cases. Usually they do come from, a county social worker or someone who is verifying the family situation. In those instances, we have assisted them. And that has been done on a one-by-one basis. So we have had those scenarios and we have addressed those. But again, usually they come with some sort of verification from a county worker, the principal, or someone who has greater knowledge on their true situation.
So the way I think I would address that then, knowing that you have that flexibility already, it's pretty rare, but it does happen, is whatever motions I would just ask that we add to it. Maybe we communicate that to principals that program exists. I know some of them already know, obviously, but some of them might not. So we don't need to create a new program, but just we'll communicate that. I know, Josh, you had mentioned earlier visiting principals and communicating that, but just be an email. Hey, here's our programs. By the way, case by case, working with the county, we have this available.
Okay. Could I?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. So actually, Josh and I didn't talk about this at all, and in terms of the recommendations, I agree. I would go with alternative 3. And I would really reluctantly agree to no more than a 3% increase. Josh said it better than I could say it, or really similar than I would say it. The whole idea that it's only a $10 increase, again, it's a $10 increase one year and then another year, and it's on top of what already the fee is. And I have to tell you, when I grew up in a family, when I was young, of less than modest means. And to say something is a $5 increase or a $10 increase is not something that should be taken lightly. That is a significant amount of money to a lot of families, depending on their income, especially now after the pandemic. So I don't view something as only a $10 increase. It is a 3% increase. For some people, that may not be a big deal. For other people, that is a huge deal. And so I reluctantly would support that, and the only reason I would support it is because of the fact that we're doing the $30,000 in scholarships. And again, I agree that should be the minimum amount that we're doing. I want to remind everyone that we're talking about a budget. We're looking at a budget. When it comes to youth, whether it's youth sports, which Brian and I have pounded the table on, whether it's after-school clubs, which Josh and I have pounded the table on, if there's something that a governmental agency, or in this case our park district, should be subsidizing, those are the types of things that we should be subsidizing. And so when the discussion comes up, whether it's significantly raising the amount we're going to charge Josh or someone else maybe for a wedding at Strathern, or I'm joking, Josh, or discretionary activities like a golf course that's booming with business, then we should be having that discussion even more pointedly, that it's only $5 more for a green fee for a round of golf, because that's discretionary income. Those are things that people can be paying for. So if we're talking so seriously about increases here, we need to start taking increases in those areas where the demand is high and where the income is discretionary, and we should be increasing our budget and our revenue through those activities. And whenever those discussions come up, we don't take that seriously enough. The other thing I am encouraged, and I think what Elaine has mentioned with her discussion with Jason is really encouraging, but I don't factor that into my decision here, because I've now been doing this long enough to know that until I know we're getting the money, I don't consider ourselves as getting the money. So, and that goes for any other sources. So So I am okay with the idea of alternative, I actually agree with the idea of alternative 3. I reluctantly agree with the 3% increase, and I only agree with it because of the fact that we would be spending the $30,000, which I think is the minimum we should be spending on scholarships. But I am again doing this reluctantly because we don't take the increases in discretionary areas seriously enough. We've missed out on opportunities during my 5 years on the board to increase revenues in other areas in this park district, and we need to start taking that more seriously instead of looking at things like this as areas where we're piling on fees and we're piling on costs. And that's my concern. We're not we're sometimes not analyzing our priorities correctly in terms of where we're going to raise revenue, and we need to understand that the places where you can do it economically are where there's demand, and the places where you can do it from a policy standpoint is where the income is discretionary. And that's what I want to emphasize. So I would actually strongly support alternative 3 that Josh has recommended, and reluctantly support a 3% increase, but no more.
And before I make a motion on this, if we fund it at this level for the scholarship, and then in June, budget's looking a little bit more clear, we've voted on other policies, whether it's fee increases in other places, and we are looking more confident in our projections. How does that limit us to add more to it in June?
Yeah, if there was capacity against some of the other things we've discussed, I could bring that back as part of the budget discussions to add to the 30 if there's room to do that.
The reason I mention that is for other board members, as we go through the budget process, if you identify increased revenues or cuts, and say, Brian, I would like to increase this revenue or cut this so that we can add more money in June.
I'll make sure I bring that back as part of the budget balancing scenario and put that item as an item for consideration.
Josh, I appreciate your work on this, because when my family moved to St. Valley, the reason that St. Valley was an appealing place is it was a good place to raise a family, and it was affordable. But we've lost a lot of that. So then it's like, well, why would a family starting choose our community when it's become harder and harder for kids? The part where we might not disagree or agree with as much is, I feel if that's a community value that we all pay to support the next generation, but also that means sports fees are not a luxury. As a high school teacher, I'm going to say students that are involved in sports or marching band or anything, they do better in school. So if we just raise the fees on that and it's not accessible, that's not good either, because I see that as a part of childcare. To quote Franklin Roosevelt a little bit, or paraphrase him, I think we need a new deal for children and families in our community. And we might not be able to lower fees at all times, but make it as accessible as possible. But at the same time, I don't feel like discounting it for families that have substantial needs, because what they might be looking for is quality. So when I say a new deal for children and families, I mean a quality program that's funded, but also accessible. So Josh, what do you think of this motion? Alternative 3 and alternative 3. So that's the 3% increase, and the alternative 3 for the tiers, with the communication to principals about our one-off or our programs available that are very rare but are sometimes needed for students that can't pay anything.
Thank you, Brian. Just can I speak to the motion real quick?
Yeah.
Yes,
on alternative 3, both tier 1 and tier 2, do you guys want to identify a specific number of individuals for each tier, or do you want to leave that to staff to identify that? What I mean is, like tier 2, you could designate like up to 10 or something. You could also leave it to us to be flexible with that and kind of designate that as we go, meaning staff.
I would, I'm leaning toward letting staff handle that. They're the ones that see this day to day and know more about it than we do.
Thank you, Chair.
I guess I'm a little confused. Isn't that determined by the amount of money we're allocating for that?
Well, yeah, if we have a $30,000 cap though, Ed, and say we get a bunch of folks in tier 1, we could use all of the money for those in tier 1 and there wouldn't be any funds left for tier 2. That's what I'm saying.
Well, if it gets to the point where we have a bunch of folks, I want this to come back to the board
Then
right
that we
away.
can
I'm
do
not
that as
comfortable
well, yeah.
hearing that.
It's that bad, it's terrible.
I'm speaking in exaggeration to make my point. So, but we could designate a certain number of scholarships in tier 2
Well,
to maintain.
I'm comfortable with leaving that to the staff with the understanding that if the 30,000 is not coming close to accomplishing the purpose, that I would want this immediately in front of the board.
Can I just add to that very quickly, just for the board's knowledge? If we do move forward with alternative 3, and you currently have 15 people that qualify at the 200% level, that would be $19,000. That would just move from it, what we're currently spending $10,000 to support those 15 kids, would now become $19,000 to support the same 15 kids that are currently getting a discount in our program. So at a $30,000 level, you'd be opening up about $11,000 for new scholarships, new children in that alternative.
Okay.
Dan, I would throw in a soft preference and still leave it to the discretion of staff, but a soft preference in that instance for tier 2 for those who have fewer means. But I think that discretion is still on staff, and I would second Ed that if it becomes an issue or a concern, or if we're getting close, I would appreciate a call from staff and would definitely want the board to know.
Okay. Director Gray, I didn't hear the first part of your tier 2 statement.
I would have, you asked, I would say still staff discretion on how those are numbered, but a soft preference for tier 2. When you're prioritizing.
So we want to prioritize the most in need.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then to answer Brian's question a while ago, I would second that motion, but only because I didn't get to state the motion.
I'm going to rescind my motion.
I'm leaning on Director Denner to let you make the motion.
Yeah, I'm taking back my motion. I was just asking about that motion. I have no opinions on any motions right now. Josh, you have any motions you'd like to make?
I'd like to make the motion that alternative 3 and alternative 3 be taken into effect by the Park District, and also to notify principals and community consideration that Brian Gennert mentioned previously.
I'll second that motion. All right, we're just talking about the scholarships now. We're not talking about the fees, yes?
I think the motion combined both into one motion.
Okay.
So it was alternative 3 under each subject area, the scholarships and the fees, which would be the alternative 3 scholarship and the 3% increase for the fees.
That's what I wanted to find out. Okay, that's where I was confused. All right, roll call.
I would just like to comment that I cannot support the motion. I believe we should go to alternative 1 with the 6%. I think it's able to be absorbed by those that are market rate, we'll call them, and we've subsidized them as is. Plus, we've made available to those who need the help. We're being very generous to those who need the help. And the children are being taken care of. And so my position is that we need to be more cognizant of the increased cost of operation and be realistic about those costs. But we're still being generous with our scholarship program. So I could not support the motion.
All right. I do like the idea of reaching out to Dr. Poplinsky and the local service organizations. I think it's a wonderful idea. And maybe things like weddings and golf fees could go up a little more to compensate, certainly. Okay. Okay, are we ready for a roll call?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Gennert?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
No.
Vice Chair Gray?
Aye.
Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
The motion
Okay.
carries with a 4-to-1 vote.
would also make a side comment. We were talking about sports youth fees, Ed and Brian. I will say, my comparison previously was if there was a binary choice. I am very supportive of lower fees for youth sports.
Okay. Item 10, written communications of note that we haven't already discussed at length.
I kind of messed this up, but I do have one that I want to mention. I meant to bring it in and read it, and I blew it. I didn't do it. But I'm going to paraphrase. Wayne, are you still with us? Please be still with us.
Dwayne.
Wayne?
We can send him a YouTube clip later.
I'm still here.
Okay, so I believe it was a week ago Friday, in the Acorn, there was a letter to the editor about a park bench that was added at Rancho Santa Susana Community Park, I believe for a gentleman who walks his dog that, I forget his age, but I believe 90 years old, and a relative from out of state actually wrote the letter on behalf of the entire family. I just want to say, Wayne, you and your staff make me so proud to have added that park bench to make it feasible for him to walk the park. It's just awesome, and that's my written communication of note. I meant to bring the letter in and read the letter to make this more dramatic, but I blew it. So, but I want to commend you and your staff. That was just awesome to read that letter together.
Wayne, I wrote that in my board report, and Ed beat me to it. That was my notes. I'm not sure if he's looking over here. But the reason I bring that up is, Wayne, we're really impressed with that attention to detail. I imagine sometimes it just gets lost. Like, look, we can't help everybody, but you helped that person, and you really impressed us.
Yeah, that's great. That is. Any others? Any other written communications? Okay. Item 11, reports by board members. Elaine?
Yes, we have the Strathern joint meeting and went over all other items, repairs, and future events. I think the one significant part that I've been mulling over is the problem they're going to have in digitizing all of the information that's there at Strathern. And I was wondering if through historic grants, or if there are government grants for that kind of thing, maybe to help out Strathern. They said it would take probably a year, and they're going to have to develop a program first on how to itemize everything, and then have someone that could work on this, and it could take a year or so because of all the boxes and everything that Pat has itemized and stored. But I thought maybe there are foundations, historic foundations, or maybe our grant person could look to see if there is some money available somehow that we could help with that effort. I got a call from Jackie Irwin, and we had a neat conversation, and so we set up a meeting here, and Dan and I gave her an update on the Park District, the history, our projects, our budget, and she was really, she was here a couple hours, so it was really a great meeting, and she's looking forward to, assuming she gets elected, to be our representative in the future. I'm going to adjourn the meeting in honor of Bruce Strathern, who passed away. He was a very big part of this community for many, many years, and his passing is very sad. I'm hoping that I can get the information on where to send the letter to, maybe from somebody at the park, at the Strathern Park. Also, Dan and Zach and I and Tom went out and looked at the Tierra Rajada property. And that's actually a really nice piece of property. And I'll be thinking about what our alternatives are, and so I'll be getting together with Dan. I had some questions on it as I thought about it. It's a big piece of property. It's access, utilities.
So if I could just update the board, so we've got just a couple flat pieces of land that aren't been developed. One is next to the Sinaloa Golf Course, and one is out at Terra Haute. So any of you that would like to go take a look at that spot, so I kind of reached out to Elaine with her background to kind of get some ideas of what it would take to do something out there from a development perspective. So, but if any of you would like to go out and take a look at the site, be happy to do that.
I mean, I think it's worth taking a look at.
Oh, yeah.
There's some access issues and utilities and, you know, if you're a private sector person, you could put the numbers together and decide what would work. But in our case, we're not looking at that. So another thing that I was thinking as I was sitting here is years ago, the Acorn or the Star had like a little community service announcement where it listed our board agenda items as a community service. And I was wondering if that would be beneficial to people, if they would do it as a community service.
Yeah.
We didn't have to pay for it.
I think that may work with it daily, but not a weekly, because the timing of when it prints, I'd have to look at that. And then I would imagine that they'd have us probably pay for it. So it could be in the Star, it's a daily, because they could print it, but I don't know how many people are reading the Star these days, to be honest. I mean, it'd be the Acorn, but then we're not going to meet the deadline to have our
Even
agenda
the
item
Acorn,
there, yeah.
I don't know if they would have a corner, you know, community interest corner or something.
I see what Dan's saying is that the Acorn comes out before our, almost always before our agenda would be ready.
I mean, I understand it's a timing problem, and I don't know. It was just a thought I was having as we were sitting here.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Josh, your turn, you're on.
All right. I don't have many updates, but I did want to highlight something great that's happening with a brand new local nonprofit in the community called For the Need. This Saturday, they'll be using one of our parks, and they're a nonprofit that works with those who, homeless kids or those who have experienced homelessness, and they'll be doing some really cool model rockets in one of our parks this Saturday. So I just wanted to highlight that I'm not sure if Dan was going to mention it, but you know, really cool programs going on, and I do want to thank Dan and staff who helped arrange that. That those are, you know.
Where are
they? Sir?
Where are they?
It's going to be at Rancho San Sue. Sorry.
Zach, if you could get up again. We had a question, a little more detail, Josh, so Zach is getting up to answer the question.
Gotcha.
Sorry, so Vice Chair Gray, yeah, you are correct. On Saturday, that group will be out launching model rockets from Rancho Santa Susana Park. They will be doing a little bit of building inside the community center and then go out, I think after lunch is the tentative schedule to shoot the rockets they build at the center into the air. And it's a group we've worked with to permit that this weekend.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, wanted to highlight that, and then you know, Elaine, I'm not exactly sure, but I know the Strathern and digitization of records is interesting, and I'd definitely be interested in helping find you know, grants or opportunities to help with that. And I don't know if this is helpful or not, but a thought did occur to me that the Moore Park History Department may have interest. Cal Lutheran History Department may have interest, and have students who may be able to volunteer and help minimize the costs. And at a minimum, the Ronald Reagan Library would have had to digitize a great number of records in the past, and may have advice on how to expedite that, or may have experts to alleviate, you know, some of those pains. And then the last thing I just want to highlight, you know, I want to thank staff. I want to thank the board for all the work on the after-school club fees and the scholarship program. This has been my primary issue while on the board, and I'm glad to see, I think we're making progress. I think this will be impactful. I think this will help a lot of kids and a lot of families. And I just want to say my hope is that, our scholarship program and the impact it has in our community will outlive myself. I'm really proud of that. So I want to thank staff and I want to thank the board.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
I had the Soccer Foundation meeting. I would say that I already have discussed this with Wayne a little bit, and I'll probably get an update from either Wayne or Dan before the next Soccer Foundation meeting. 2 areas of concern that they had. One is the condition of, I believe it's fields 2 and 3 at Rancho Santa Susana and the field at Madera, and Wayne indicated to me that it'll take about 30 days or so for there to be some improvement, but it's really going to take until after the next downtime to get it up to where it needs to be. And then they're also just asking about the progress on just the improvements at Rancho Santa Susana, and they were just hopeful that it would be within the next 4 years, and Wayne tells me we should have it all done in the next 2 or 3 years, so they'll probably be relieved to hear that. That's what I have.
Thank you. Director Gennard?
There's a card upstairs for the new superintendent and the retiring superintendent. If anyone hasn't signed it, you just sign it so we can send it out. If ever you can't make it in to the office, you can always tell Sandy to sign it for you. But if that applies to anybody, it's upstairs if you want to go up there tonight. I went on a hike today. Maybe not hike is a dramatic word, but Harry and I walked around Corriganville Park. He has an expertise in film history, so I now know a little bit more about film, and it was a great time to be outside. You already mentioned the pollinator garden. It was a group of folks that work for Disney, plus the Friends of Oak Park Open Space teaming up, so it was a pretty big group. Harry submitted the photos to the Acorn of the people volunteering. It was amazing to see how many people they really got out there. I spoke to Elaine Litster. We had a really good conversation about working with their youth council, and she put in some work and she was very creative with some ideas. And she mentioned it might be on an upcoming agenda. And I mentioned when it was that Elaine would be there, Litster, and myself, and maybe you were a staff member. But
yeah, I think the staff has gotten together, so that'll be agendized pretty soon. Zach can update us on that one.
Yeah, we had a very good meeting with the staff from the city. I think our rough timeline would be to do some collaborative projects starting in April with the Youth Council. We will agendize those things for you, but some collaboration between updates between the two groups. And I think our intent is to host one of their Youth Council meetings in this building prior to maybe one of our board meetings so that we can kind of do both in one time. But we're working on those details with the staff over at the city.
Thank you. And then this, we have a Facebook page for 2 parts. We have our Facebook page for our park district, but we also have a Facebook page for film and RSRPD. All staff and board members, I'm asking you to like both of those pages and like a bunch of those posts. It allows the reach of those posts to go further, and it makes us save money when we choose to advertise using those. So maybe your family and friends, just click like on those posts. I have the badge currently for top fan of the park district, and I see that sometimes Josh also has it. Josh, I don't know if you have it this week. But all it is like if you literally will like the post that we put out, you get to be a top fan too. Then lastly, this week, we're going to be back at Hummingbird on Saturday, clearing graffiti. Wayne and Nikki have done a good job with new groups that want to be involved. So by posting the pictures of the work we did in the past, new groups have reached out and want to get involved, and I appreciate that. Which brings me, Dan, to a question. You had earlier mentioned a report about remains at Hummingbird. Was there any update on that?
No update. We're waiting to hear the PD and I think the tribe are in communication. So we're kind of in a wait and see how the tribe monitoring that, and they'll reach out to us if they need anything from us. So.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. I just had the one meeting, the Historical Society with Director Freeman, which we've already talked about. Have they thought, by the way, on that archiving, digitizing the archives, have they reached out to like the California Historical Society and the Ventura County? They have, okay. That seemed like a good idea. I like Josh's ideas too, those were good.
I'm thinking, somebody mentioned the Deer Hill pickleball court and invited us to come out and take a look. Should we set up an expedition to go see it?
It would have to, if there's more than 3 of you, it would have to be a publicly noticed meeting, more than 2, so. It may be better to do it individually, if you
I'll
want to
just
go
go
out
out-
with the
I'll just
staff.
go out and take a look
Well, we can go with you
I'll
too,
go with
but
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it on my way home.
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll go out there.
Okay. And that's all I had, really. Item 12, report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair. Skate park is good. I mentioned, Brian, this is of interest to you, the sycamore erosion issue. I just want to let you know we're working on that, and I've talked to the gentleman out there, the hillside.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he's up to speed on what we're doing. We did finish striping, dual court striping at Rancho Cini. And we've gotten the nets, I believe, or they're tomorrow morning we'll have the nets, so the newly dual striped courts at Duck Pond or Rancho Cini are complete and ready for use. Elaine mentioned the Terra Haute property. We did have a meeting with Kiwanis. I think they're interested in some type of assistance for the after-school club program. They're still working on that. Concerts for in the park are complete and scheduled. I think the board, some of the staff reached out to you guys to let you know about that. We'll get that information out to all of the board. I did meet, the staff and I met with Dean Rosenthal to orient her to the Oak Park Committee. Gave her a lot of background on the district and what she needs to know. I did mention golf. Our golf usage spiked really high. It's now dropping back down. It's still up, but it's softened from where we were mid-COVID. So just a note there. We're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on hiring our second full-time ranger. It's kind of a really big deal. It's been vacant for 2 years. Or actually 3 years, so it'll be it'll be a nice support for Jim, and will create some ongoing stability and efficiencies in the Ranger program. So we're working on some. Brian had mentioned some suggestion changes to the trail guide, including providing it in Spanish as requested. Friends of the Oak Park volunteer group, which is awesome. They're doing great. They have asked us, they're going to apply for a county tree grant. So the county of Ventura has about $1 million in tree money. The volunteer group is going to apply for the grant, and then we're going to give them permission to plant some trees in the parks in Oak Park. So our role, they're going to do the work, which is kind of the idea of the volunteer group, and we'll give them permission to access the park and plant the trees. So I don't know if the board saw, but there was a significant medical issue at one of our courts, I think 2 days ago, and there was some life-saving efforts that were deployed, a cardiac issue. I did get a call from a couple in the community that are interested in helping us put AEDs out at some of our outdoor court locations. So just a heads up, the staff and I will be kind of developing that concept. Certainly we'll bring it to the board at the appropriate time, but they were interested in kind of expanding our AED capabilities out in the park. We currently have 5, I believe, locations and 1 mobile, but they're all tied to the buildings that we have, not so much out to the park. So January financials look pretty good. Everything's on target. We did get a CalPERS update, and actually we got some good news. Our funded status went from 73 to, or 75 to 88, I believe. So that was very good news. I attribute that probably to the market doing really well. We don't know how that's going to translate into what our CalPERS costs are yet. Usually that kind of trails a year or two, but that's a huge positive movement on CalPERS projections. And again, just a reminder, we're going to give a presentation to the City Council on March 14th. Wayne and I as staff will do that, and then certainly if the board would like to attend, I would imagine the council's going to talk about it a little bit. So
I would like to have the specific plan, if Wayne still has a copy of it, to take to the council meeting, then I'd like to share with them.
Okay, we can do that. We do have a copy.
Dan, that meeting, you said we're all welcome to, because it's already a Crown Acted, agendized meeting.
Yeah.
Like all 5 of us can attend?
You can all attend, I would imagine, maybe Kate as the chair might be the speaker.
Yeah.
On behalf of the full board, you could all attend and listen to the conversation. But Wayne and I will do the 10 or 15 minute PowerPoint to update the board, and then maybe the chair can introduce, and then you guys can be there.
Didn't they want a history?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of history. I think they're more interested in where we are now and what we're doing moving forward. So there will be a little bit of history in there. It's only going to be about 10 minutes, so yeah. The next March 2nd board meeting, we've got BMX, just bringing them up for a conversation, no particular action on that. We've got our financial statements and a presentation to a Boy Scout for a project completed. That's about it for the 2nd so far. Again, we may bring, I guess, well, I'm going to work with the chair on the timing of bringing back the drone discussion. That may not make it by March 2nd, so maybe after. And then on the 16th, we look pretty light. We're really light on the 16th right now. Really, really light. So we'll keep it that way. Well, I think Miss Ed is gone.
It's possible. I mean,
yeah. So the 16th, we're trying to keep light, and it's light right now.
Can we discuss committees that night?
That was funny.
Did you mention BMX?
March 2nd.
Yeah. We have no committee meetings scheduled other than the regular Strather meeting and Soccer Foundation, and that concludes my report.
Okay.
Dan, before the March 2nd meeting, could you, I know that we wouldn't all go at the same time, but could you invite board members and whoever wants to go to a tour like you and I have looked at SAPWE before? Just make that available.
I'm sorry, tour what?
Tour SAPWE, which is the bike park in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, okay.
I don't need to go, I've already done that with Dan, but if you just make yourself available for that, if anybody else wants to see what that looks like.
I think Lena's seen it. Yeah, sure.
What day is it?
Any day. Brian is suggesting that you guys go take a look.
21st to the 28th.
I was only suggesting that Dan make sure he's available if anybody wants to tour with him to understand it more.
Tell me again what
Sackway Park is Conejo, where they've done a bike trekker.
Got it,
park,
okay, yeah.
And they've also done a disc golf course around it. But I think the point is before we talk about BMX, is that the board may want to be familiar with what they built at Sackway.
That would be useful. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to go look at that before the 2nd, before the BMX trek, the staff or we can go out there with you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn tonight's meeting in honor of Bruce Strather. Meeting adjourned.